Good morning and welcome to the Mike Graham Show. It is, of course, Thursday. It is the 19th of March and we have got one heck of a show for you to do today. Of course, we came in a little early because that's what we like to do, catch you on the hop if you were sitting there with your coffee.
Ellie Hodges.
I'm not Ellie Hodges. Do you mind?
Yeah, sorry.
You know, she will be in later, but I don't think she'll be too happy about the change of sex, first of all, and also, secondly, she's about 50 years older. Than her. Anyway, she'll be here. William Yarwood's here, though, in the morning. Very, very nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Mike. Thanks, man.
Good to see you, man. We've got so many stories to talk to you about. We've got, you know, the front pages this morning are Iran wages economic war on the West, front page of the Daily Mail. British military plan to reopen the Straits of Hormuz, which is the Times, you know, of course, the official newspaper of the Labour government. We've got Gary Glitter, who's apparently broke and deaf and on his last legs. To which I would say, hurrah! Do you want to be in my gang? What is it? It's the Dead Gang. Yeah, absolutely right. Migrant U-turn after rain of pressure. Front page of the Telegraph. It looks as though yet another U-turn is coming from that useless Prime Minister Kier Starmer. We'll get to him in a minute. Also, chicken nuggets migrant. Remember the guy who from Albania said that he couldn't take his son back to Albania because he didn't like the chicken nuggets there? Guess what? He's been given the right to stay in Britain. Can you believe that? Absolutely incredible. Meanwhile, NHS staff are told to wear masks to stop the spread of meningitis. How do you think that's going to go? Right, because of course we know that masks work really, really well. British Steel is in the crapper because it turns out. I just don't remember. By the way, Jonathan Reynolds. Remember Jonathan Reynolds?
Yeah.
The business secretary, the fake solicitor, as we used to call him. He was put in charge of British Steel years ago, right?
Yes, he was.
And now nobody talks about him.
No one
nobody
does.
mentions him.
No one does. And also, the last guy you want running Steel is that guy.
Yeah, right. He's never run anything. And
No,
he tells a
absolutely
lot of
not.
lies about how he used to be a solicitor. The funniest story of the day is from Swansea, down in Welsh Wales. We're going to be talking to Jamie Jenkins earlier because we think he's been spotted there. A naked sauna has apparently been shut down. Don't ask me what that's about because we'll have to tell you later on. But yeah, and also there's quite a lot of stuff around about Harry and Meghan this morning and how Netflix has basically dumped them into the street and gone, you people are absolutely hopeless, hideous, useless individuals, and so we don't want anything to do with you. But I want to start the show off today with me having a bit of a rant about Kier Starmer, right? Because yesterday it was Prime Minister's questions, and yesterday he did his level best. If he was trying to make himself look like a complete and utter idiot, he succeeded brilliantly, right? It's about the only thing he's actually successful at is making himself look stupid. So I'm going to have a bit of a meltdown about it. What is that weird looking thing that looks a bit like a jellyfish on fire?
It's you.
Is that me?
That's Rachel Reeves.
Rachel Reeves, yeah. So the whole point of yesterday's Prime Minister's questions was that Kier Starmer has admitted that he made a mistake in rehiring Peter Mandelson to be the ambassador to the United States of America. He's admitted that he got it wrong, right? Meanwhile, all the people who were involved in the decision-making process, like Morgan McSweeney, like Lord Doyle, like a couple of other people who are inside the sort of Downing Street machine, they've all gone. They have all lost their jobs. They've all wandered off into the sunset. But Kier Starmer is still there, right? And yesterday, he was asked several times whether he could explain why it was that he said, I was told a load of lies by Peter Mandelson, and I believed his lies, and that's how I managed to get it so wrong. Now, he then said that he never met him. He never spoke to him. He never actually picked up the phone. He never actually had him sitting in front of him on his desk. So quite rightly, Kerry Badenoch said to him, well, hang on, if you never actually met the guy or had a conversation with him about what it was that you wanted him to do, how was it that you managed to believe his lies that he told you? How does that work? And it's absolutely bloody infuriating. Have a look at this. Kerry Badenoch nails it.
Did the Prime Minister personally speak to Peter Mandelson about his relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein before appointing him as our ambassador to Washington?
Yes or no? Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me start where I must. This was my mistake in making the appointment, and I've apologised to the victims of Epstein. I do so again. The government is complying with the humble address in full, but we are also continuing to support the police in their investigation. The matter of process was looked at by the independent advisor on ministerial standards. It's clear the appointment process wasn't strong enough, and that's why I've already strengthened it. But it was my mistake, Mr. Speaker, and I've apologised for it.
He has repeatedly told us that Peter Mandelson lied to him. But he won't tell us if he actually picked up the phone and spoke to Mandelson before appointing him. This doesn't make any sense. The Prime Minister told us on the record, and I quote, "I believed the lies he told me." If the Prime Minister didn't speak to him, how can he say he lied to him?
Prime Minister. Speaker, the process is clear. It's been looked at by the independent advisor.
There he is.
Just saw Jonathan Reynolds there sitting at the end nodding. How can he be this so-called forensic lawyer, right, who only deals in facts, who only deals in the truth, who talks absolute and utter cobblers every single time he opens his mouth, who tells lies? I mean, I'm sorry. Kemi Badenoch is absolutely right. She said, how can he have been lied to? How can he have believed Peter Mandelson's lies if he never spoke to him? I mean, William, can you help me out here?
Yeah, I mean, classic, first of all, Kier Starmer not answering the question in the first place and relying on process, because Kier Starmer's mind works like that, right? He's a lawyer, he loves the process, you know, he reads all the details, so to speak, clearly doesn't understand any of them. But one thing I get irritated with Starmer on this specifically is if he had nothing to hide, he'd welcome an investigation looking into his relationship specifically with Mandelson and what he knew about it. But he's not doing it because he knows. Like, he actually just gave it away there. He just gave it away. That actually he did indeed talk to Mandelson after he knew that he had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein and still waved him through. Now, we need to know why. We need to know why he waved him through after he had that conversation, because surely, even for someone who is as politically inastute as Kier Starmer, he must have known this would have blown him in the face in the future.
Well, you would think so. I mean, Dan Hodges has got a great piece in the Mail today, right, in which, as ever, after I groomed him to make out that, because he used to love Kier Starmer. When Kier Starmer first got in, you know, Dan Hodges basically said, this guy's going to be different, he's going to be great, he's not a politician, he's not going to be slippery, he's going to be absolutely straight down the line, and he's going to tell the truth about everything, and he's going to be forensic about, you know, making sure that people do what they're supposed to do. The headline: by refusing 6 times to answer a basic question about Peter Mandelson, Starmer signalled he knows this scandal will finish him off. That's what Dan Hodges says in the Mail today.
Yeah, and Starmer knows it will finish him.
And there was a moment there, and after the second time she asked him, where you could see his face was kind of, you know, falling into a kind of grimace, because he knows he's got nowhere to go. Yeah,
and he's also got nothing to add apart from what he's been saying off, right? And actually, you know, I know we're going to talk about it, but a backbench Tory MP who I've actually never heard of properly went for him actually in a non-scripted speech, a non-scripted question, which was a nice change of pace for PMQs, basically saying, look, Prime Minister, what is the point of coming here every single week and hearing you rattle stuff off, which has no relevance to the question that you being asked? So I'm going to ask you again what the question is. And what did Kier Starmer do? Trot off the same line.
Well, not only that, but he sort of went off onto a tangent and tried to attack the backbench MP on the subject of the Conservative stance on the Iran war.
But what's that got to do with the conversation they're having?
Exactly. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In fact, we've got it here. Andrew Snowden is the MP's name. Let's have a look at what he said yesterday.
Every week the Prime Minister comes here and reads out this pre-scripted nonsense that bears no resemblance to the questions he's actually asked. The Leader of the Opposition asked him about Peter Mandelson and he answered about the war in Iran. The Leader of the Opposition asked him about Mandelson again and he answered with an attack on the Shadow Justice Secretary. He was asked about Mandelson again and talked about protests in London. What is he scared of? What is he hiding? For a man who has spent years presenting himself as a forensic investigator, he has certainly had a blind spot to the details for this convicted paedophile with a friend in high Labour places. So I shall ask him again, when he found out that Lord Mandelson had an ongoing relationship with the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, did he speak to him personally before appointing him ambassador to the United States?
Mr. Speaker, we've set out the process. It is being put before the House. But I know why they don't want to. They don't want to talk about the war because they supported going into the war without thinking through the consequences. That is a huge error of judgment. I realise they don't want to talk about it ever again. I'm not surprised. Nor do they want to talk about the Shadow Justice Secretary, saying that Muslims
Yeah,
are not
pivot
welcome.
back to Nick.
And then he
prayer
starts having
in
a go about Trafalgar Square.
You should remove him from their front bench.
What's that got to do with it, Prime Minister?
He'll be up there next on that trail.
I mean, so he gets asked a direct question, very simple.
Yeah.
Did he or did he not speak to Peter Mandelson before he appointed him as ambassador to the United States of America? He gets up and goes, what about Trafalgar Square and Nick Timothy having a go about Sadiq Khan? He hates Muslims, get him off the front bench. Ridiculous, absolutely awful. That's why they don't want to talk about the war. I mean, if you had a child that responded like that,
Yeah.
you give him a clip round the ear.
Absolutely.
I mean, obviously that wouldn't be the right thing to do, but in the old days, shall we say, you would go, say your son comes home from school. Sorry, what did you do with your homework? The dog ate it. Or, don't ask me about that. You don't want to talk about the fact that you can't make my dinner.
Yeah, why is dinner half an hour late,
exactly.
Mum? Yeah.
That's kind of the response level.
Exactly, it's pathetic, it's childish.
A very, very straightforward question. And I think Dan Hodges is right. Maybe this will finally, hopefully, God bless us if it's true, finally will be the final nail in the coffin for Kier Starmer's career, because he's an absolute charlatan, a liar, a scumbag and a thief.
Yeah, and if you're a backbench
Sue me.
If you're a backbench Labour MP as well, you must be extremely embarrassed having to go home every Friday to your constituents, right? And you're sat there in surgery meetings with constituents, and the likelihood that Kier Starmer gets brought up is going to be high.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I saw PMQs on Twitter this week. Why is the Prime Minister not answering a single question about Mandelson? I mean, and what's their response going to be?
Yeah.
Oh, well, the process. Oh, well, the Prime Minister's already
apologised. You don't want to talk about the war.
Yeah, you don't want to talk about the war. Sorry. And also,
don't mention the war.
Oh, don't mention the war. Don't mention the war.
I think I got away with it.
orders must be obeyed. But the interesting thing from all of this is that Prime Minister's Questions is no longer Prime Minister's Questions. It's essentially Kier Starmer having a go at the Conservative Party and Reform the entire time, which is what he does. Sorry, Prime Minister's Questions is for you, Kier.
Answer the bleeding question.
Answer the bleeding question. Otherwise, just don't bother turning up.
Well, what's Lindsay Hoyle doing, by the way? Why is Lindsay Hoyle, the Speaker of the House, who sits, in judgment on all of them, why is he not saying to him, excuse me, Prime Minister, would you mind answering the bloody question?
Yeah. To Lindsay's question point before, he has said before, it's not opposition questions, Prime Ministers, it's Prime Minister's questions. But there needs to be more rigorous enforcement of it. You're completely right. Because again, as I say every single week when I come in for my, post-PMQ therapy session, this is a complete farce, and it's almost completely pointless to watch, and it seems to get worse on worse on worse.
And the public deserve better, quite frankly.
Do deserve
we're
better,
paying for all these
absolutely.
bozos to sit there.
Yeah.
We're giving them not only, as I pointed out the other week, not only are we paying them, in excess of £110,000 a year now.
Yeah.
People like Ed Davey, who we'll come on to in a minute, is claiming £320,000 for an office that he runs and he staffs with all various people around him. And the idea that we don't get value for money has gone well beyond a joke many years ago.
Absolutely, and the idea that we can just give these guys more money and suddenly they'll improve their stature and become like new great statesmen is for the birds.
Yeah.
I mean, we at the Taxpayers Alliance went pretty hard against the MP's pay rise and stuff, and granted it was a perfect time to do so because they all decided to prance around and dance in Parliament that week while the country and the Middle East burnt to death.
Yeah, right.
And the idea that this lot, when you watch these guys at PMQs, when you watch these guys in the House, reading off their ChatGPT scripts, shaking out of their boots, you think, these are the last people who really need money. And the idea that if suddenly we just paid MPs more, or incentivise MPs to be paid more, that better people would come and work in Parliament and be MPs. Nonsense. We'd just get more of the exact same, and actually it'd possibly be worse because people who are, even worse than the current crop of MPs will be more incentivised to come and get more cash out of the British taxpayer.
Yeah, totally, absolutely right. Quick super chat for you. Front side bus says Kier Starmer is a W, and then there's a picture of an anchor. We're not going to say that. Super chat from T447. Morning, Mike. Absolutely love the show. Haven't missed one yet. Could you give me a shout out to theirs? It's my birthday. At least the sun is shining. Happy birthday to you, 447. Absolutely, cash, Antonio, morning all from sunny Somerset. Yeah, it is. I mean, I'll tell you what, yesterday, I have to say, I had the pleasure of sitting outside a very nice wine bar in Borough Market with the sun shining on my face. It was literally like some kind of alien thing that was going on. And I was going, I'd completely forgotten, because you do.
Yeah, you do.
What it feels like is a warm sun. actually on your face.
I've started wearing sunglasses.
Yeah.
Because it's too bright actually to walk around without sunglasses on. I love wearing sunglasses. It's so
not
nice.
a disguise you're wearing, is it?
To avoid the Kier Starmer goons
prying eyes of the
searching out for the
goons, yeah.
taxpayers' alliance.
Exactly right. Morning all. So we got that one. Yeah. So yeah, but the whole thing is a complete and utter joke, right? Let's have a look at what else happened yesterday. Ed Davey, as we said, we would mention him. He gets up yesterday and decides, bizarrely, to have an attack on GB News. Now, you might know that we have got a little bit of a spat going on with GB News at the moment over Kelvin McKenzie, because we want to hire Kelvin to do a show with us, right? And GB News is trying to prevent us from doing it. But we still love GB News. We want GB News to succeed. We want more kind of, more plurality of media, the better. But apparently Ed Davey doesn't want that.
No.
Ed Davey would like to shut them down. Have a look.
A New World investigation into GB News has found hundreds of shocking breaches of the rules of impartiality and accuracy. Yet Ofcom has repeatedly refused to take action. Andrew Neil says, just as Fox basically became the channel of Donald Trump, it is clear they have turned GB News into the Reform channel. Mr. Speaker, we cannot let GB News propaganda turn our great country into their version of Trump's America. Either the government rules aren't fit for purpose, or Ofcom isn't properly enforcing them. Prime Minister, which is it?
Prime Minister.
Well, he's right to raise an important question of free speech and our media. It is a matter for Ofcom, and it's important that we let them deal with it.
It's a matter for Ofcom. We must let them deal with it, because Ofcom, of course, is a completely independent organisation, nothing to do with me. I don't get to tell them what to do. I mean, do they think we heads zip up the back? Would be my question. Everybody knows that Kier Starmer is a control freak.
Yeah.
He's all over every regulatory body that he can get his hands on. And if he thought that GB News had done something wrong, he'd be trying to shut them down.
Absolutely. I mean, they're one of his main critics. But one thing that annoyed me the most about Ed Davey, apart from Ed Davey himself just annoying me on a daily basis anyway, when he pops up on my TV occasionally, is that this guy talked to GB News just last weekend.
Yeah.
Just like we gave an exclusive interview with Catherine Forster and was very polite, answered all of her questions, in a straight-mannered way. And then she stands up in Parliament and says, actually, this show needs to be shut, this entire program needs to be shut down because it's propaganda.
Do you remember when Adam Bolton called for them to be shut down?
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Well, one, they're all jealous.
Right.
First of all, they're all jealous. And second of all, the Liberal Democrats calling for a quango, namely Ofcom, to engage essentially in political activism on their behalf is completely appalling.
Yeah.
When was it
Absolutely.
liberal? When was it liberal democratic to argue for taxpayer-funded quangos to engage in censorship and activism on behalf of parties like the Liberal Democrats?
Yeah.
The reason the Liberal Democrats don't like GB News is because when they go on, unlike when they go on the BBC or when they go on ITV, they don't get a nice, cool, easy ride.
No.
And also, the Liberal Democrats constantly whinge and complain about getting no media coverage. And then when they do get invited on GB News, they say, oh, no thanks, I don't want to do so.
Yeah, right.
I know Davey apparently has been invited on GB News multiple times. Liberal Democrat MPs, councillors have been invited on multiple times, and they turn it down because they don't consider it to be serious.
No.
But then they complain about GB News, saying, "Well, we're annoyed Liberal Democrats don't come and talk to us," and they go, "Oh, well, actually, that's just all reform propagandists." It's like, well, if they were reform propagandists, they wouldn't be inviting you on in the first place.
Right, exactly.
And also, on a second point, Mike, if I may, how on earth they can say that GB News is reform propaganda when they've got Camilla Tominley on a Sunday, when she rips people to shreds on a Sunday? She's easily one of their best assets.
Yeah.
I remember watching a fantastic interview with her versus Richard Tice, and poor old Richard, bless his heart, got torn to shreds by Camilla. And that's proper journalism. That's not, kid glove stuff.
Absolutely.
So how they can say that, I simply do
But
not
also,
know.
they fall over backwards at GB News to be balanced. I mean, in such a way that I actually find it quite annoying at times. When suddenly they'll be covering a story and then they'll come back from a break and go, oh, just to make sure that, the segment is balanced, we're going to read out this statement from whoever it is.
Yeah.
Whether it's a university or, a business or a place of employment somewhere, or civil service or the government, and they've constantly got government ministers on. They are a very reputable organisation.
Yes, and
the idea that Ed Davey thinks it's just a reform propaganda machine shows you what a complete and utter numpty the bloke is.
Yeah, absolutely. And if he wanted properly to try and cut through to possible reform and conservative voters or the right of the British public, he should be begging to go on GB News all the time to make his case.
Right.
And this is the thing that irritates me about Davey.
Maybe she's pouncing about, pretending to be Daddy Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, at the Lib Dem bleeding conference.
And the way in which actually people reacted to that was quite telling. Various Liberal Democrats are actually starting to get very annoyed with Davey because he's not been able to capitalise on the gains that he made in the general election in 2024. They've barely moved in the polls. They've actually gone down in the polls, actually, Mike. They've had no real cut through, and they've doubled down on this Trump bad, Nigel Farage bad strategy, when in reality they're completely away from what the average member of the public and average voter actually cares about and wants. So this is why the Liberal Democrats are floundering and failing in the face of reform, and actually in the face of the Greens, who, whatever you think about Zach Polanski, he will take every media bid he possibly can get, and actually is interesting to listen to on TV, and he's charismatic. You know, when's the last time Ed Davies did anything of worthwhile or interest, and when's the last time any Liberal Democrat MP
the last time I saw
him
him being interviewed, which I think you're right, was on GB News, it was him saying that we should be aligning ourselves far closer to Europe and we should be kind of, you know, pushing America away. And I think it might have been somebody interviewing him, I can't remember, who said, you know, are you really saying that actually if we were in a position of, you know, having to defend ourselves, you would not be looking to America to look after us or to help us? You'd actually be hoping that the EU kind of saved us. Well, you know, God help us if that's the case, because, you know, the Lib Dems are so out of touch that they want to alienate the United States of America. What a complete band of idiots.
I know, and also they're just retreading the old EU Remainer stuff, which made them, they made them popular for a little bit in the end, in sort of Brexit chaos days, but post-2019, it completely destroyed them. I mean, Joe Swinson, of course, who was the head, you know, remember that bus you made, our next Prime Minister, right?
Well, do you remember, on the night of the election, I think, once the polls closed, she was like, you know, prepare for government and all that. And she didn't even keep the seat.
No.
You lost her seat.
Yeah, precisely.
In Scotland.
So showing her that even in Scotland, a pretty hardcore Remain area, that the Liberal Democrats are just not taken seriously.
No.
And they're actually a complete joke. And Davey, for years, to his credit, tried to build the Liberal Democrats into something else to get them to a position where they could win in 2024 more seats. But even then, you know, like how Labour's majority is sort of built on sand, so is the Liberal Democrats, because lots of people, especially in the Tory shires, were just voting Liberal Democrat because it was the inoffensive non-Tory party, which possibly wasn't going to raise their taxes or do anything bad. But this is the last thing I'll say on the Liberal Democrats. I live in a Liberal Democrat seat in London, and it's quite nice, really. But most Liberal Democrat seats are quite nice. You shove illegal migrant hotels in Liberal Democrat areas, and you watch them switch reform. And also the problem with the Liberal Democrats more broadly is that Liberal Democrats are never in government. They're never in government, so it's very hard to remove them in general elections. They can promise anything.
They can promise everything and anything that they want. They've always done that. And I mean, they were always known, bizarrely, before, say, the SNP had the rise in Scotland and before reform came along, they were always seen as a kind of slightly nutty party because all of their different beliefs were kind of all put together in one bag, but most of them didn't agree on anything.
No.
You know, it went all the way from people who wanted to stay inside of Europe to, you know, people who wanted the death penalty to people who didn't want the death penalty. There was all over the place,
all over the place.
And I'm glad you mentioned migrants, because migrants is a big story we want to talk about this morning as well, because according to the Times and the Telegraph, plans to double the time migrants must wait to qualify for permanent settlement in Britain are now likely to be watered down to avert a Labour rebellion. And apparently this is because Angela Rayner has stepped into the breach and said, you know, we can't have this Shabana Mahmood kind of inspired crackdown on migrants. We can't be telling them that they have to stay here for a lot longer before they can be naturalised or given British citizenship. But basically, it's un-British, she says, to give them such a hard time. Which means we're back to the beginning, and yet another U-turn now coming from Kier Starmer.
Yeah, and one thing I will say on this topic is, for all the people who are getting maybe a bit excited about Shabana Mahmood and getting a bit excited that the Labour government might actually do something on the immigration reform front, my position, like with anything with this Labour government, Mike, is they're going to let you down and they're not going to do it because they endlessly U-turn because they are scared of their own backbenchers, which of course there are many of them. And also now you've got Rayner on the backbenches causing trouble and, you know, organising rebellions in this way and is able to throw her weight around, so to speak. You know, of course these plans are never going going to get through. So when I remember going on TV being asked about Mahmood's reforms, you know, are they going to get through? You know, are they worthwhile? And I was like, it's pretty irrelevant if they're worthwhile or not, because the Parliamentary Labour Party is not going to vote for them. So like you said, Mike, we're just back to square one at this point, and poor old Mahmood, who I think, like most Home Secretaries, has developed Home Office derangement syndrome because she's gone into the Home Office, and realised just how bad the entire system is. And it's putting forward reforms which, on surface level, are relatively sensible in my opinion. And actually, you know, the last Conservative government should have implemented in the first place. But the difference is that the Conservatives at least might have voted for it. Parliamentary Labour Party members are not going to vote for this because, of course, a lot of them, you know, believe still in open borders. You know, one race, the human race. Let's all hold hands as in kumbaya. And the real problem is trillionaires and billionaires, not illegal migrants, not welfare. Illegal migrants coming over here and using social housing and welfare and the like. But yeah, Mahmood's if Mahmood doesn't get this through, she's a lame duck, and then what does she do next? Well, she probably just kind of have to resign.
She just joins the ranks of all the other Home Secretaries who basically weren't able to get anything done. I was at a do the other night with Suella Braverman, and we were chatting about how, it's really, really difficult to cut through the Home Office kind of, thick bread and butter style, corridors where, you're literally walking through one door and then there's another sort of labyrinth that you have to go through to get to the next bit. And, at every single stage, there is some civil servant trying to block whatever it is that you've 100%. Actually been given permission by either the government or the people of this country to do. 100%. And so you can't do it.
No, and actually I remember when I first joined the Taxpayers Alliance, and I wrote an article about a Centre for Policy Studies report which basically advocated for the abolition of the Home Office and the splitting of it up. And I actually backed that idea because I think the Home Office is a department that's actually too big and too sprawling, because the Home Secretary has to deal with a lot of national security issues with MI5 and the like, and has to deal with a lot of police and crime stuff. And actually, because that stuff takes precedence, the migration stuff gets put right at the bottom of the file. I think a proper department for immigration and border security would be better, meaning you have a Secretary of State that is laser focused.
You do it like America, like Homeland Security.
Exactly.
And just go, this is the only thing you do.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about the police, you don't have to worry about, as you say, the other aspects of the Home Office or, illegal marriage or any of that stuff. Just pure and simple immigration.
And you can have a tight, small, efficient department that focuses deportations, ILR, visas, the works. And I think that would be I'm not often want to advocate for new government departments, Mike, but of course I'm advocating for abolition of a big one and the firing of a lot of people. So it might save a little bit of money in the long run as well. I think that's the only way we're going to get out of this situation, because the Home Office, as it currently is simply just not fit for purpose.
And as if you needed any more confirmation of that, and I haven't even mentioned, by the way, that because of this nice warm weather, I was talking to somebody yesterday about the live show that we're doing actually in May. It's Carol Decker, actually, I was talking to, who's going to be coming along to our live show. You can see it there, May the 6th. Shepherd's Bush Empire. She's going to join the merry throng. Carol Decker, the China in my hand woman, as you might know. She's basically saying, the problem is that, you look out the window and you go, isn't the weather lovely? It's fantastic. What a nice day. I'll go and sit in the garden, put some sun cream on. And then as soon as you sit down with a glass of Pimm's, you go, crikey, there'll be a lot of migrants coming over today. Because we all kind of do the same thing. We all think the same way. And you kind of go, I wonder how many have come so far. And I was hearing, I think yesterday afternoon, we talked to Jamie Jenkins later on the show, who will confirm, there's now more illegal migrants having arrived in the first 3 months of the year than in last year's first 3 months. So the numbers are actually going up, not down.
What happened to smashing the gangs? Smashing the gangs, stopping the boats. I take immigration seriously. Because every time...
It's all about online safety. How about offline safety, you plonker?
Yeah, right,
like
exactly.
in the real world.
Yeah, well, this is why we need digital ID, folks. This is, we're like, let's give digital ID.
Yeah, because that will stop them.
Yeah, because suddenly, digital, that will suddenly to stop, imagine, you're coming in on a boat and it goes, oh, well, sorry, fellas, we can't get on the boat. Kier Starmer's just implemented digital ID. We're done for.
Oh,
we're done for.
No, we're done for. Just got a quick message there on the digital ID, I think. Can we just see that one again, Pooch? Sorry. From Tanya, Super Chat. Everyone, please fill out the digital ID questionnaire. Is that the one that the government's put out? Yeah. I assume that's what you mean. And also, as if you needed any more, here's another one from Cindy. It says, Mike, more Ziggy videos, please. Okay, well, we got Pooch's Pooch coming up a bit later on. Maybe I'll supply him with a couple of Ziggy videos to whet your appetite. As if you needed any more confirmation that the system in this country is completely useless and broken in terms of the immigration system. Do you remember the Albanian who said that he couldn't take his son back to Albania because he didn't like the chicken nuggets that were made anywhere but Britain? Well, according to The Sun today, on page 23, he's won his appeal to stay in Britain. Right? So, despite the fact that they said he was later deported because, yes, the judge initially admitted him on the basis that, you know, the chicken nuggets excuse was fine. But don't worry, that's just anecdotal because he was sent back. Well, it turns out he wasn't sent back. He's still here. And according to this, they can't name the judges ruled that as the youngster has sensory difficulties, it would be in the best interest of the family for him to stay here. First Tier Tribunal Judge Linda Veloso said the child referred to as C in the proceedings has received invaluable support from his school and that his improvement was a delicate ongoing process. What? So now he's allowed to have ketchup with his chicken nuggets? I mean, I don't know. She also said the UK was the only country C had known and the lad neither spoke nor understood Albanian. Right? His father, a guy called Clevis Disha, was jailed for 2 years in 2017 after being found with £250,000 in cash, known to be the proceeds of crime.
Oh, what a surprise.
What, do you think he might be a drug dealer from Albania?
No.
Really? What, you mean a coke dealer from Albania? Seriously? Are you having a laugh? Anyway, he was due to be kicked out of the UK, but now he's going to be staying. Brilliant.
Do you know what, Mike?
I mean, Jesus Christ.
I mean, only in Great Britain could that story could be true, right? Only in this country could that story be true. And actually, this is why, to bring up Reform's immigration plans, this is why I think actually Reform's immigration plans to make sure that these things are non-judiciables in the sense that they can't challenge in court their deportation is really, really important because this is the situation you get in. This is the situation you get into where basically, you know, people, you know, who are criminals and illegal migrants, they prevent themselves from being deported because of, silly stories. I remember the Telegraph did a long list of them about a year ago, and it was, there was chicken nuggets ones. There was one person who said he couldn't be deported because he didn't have any friends back at home. No, seriously, that was their argument.
I know.
And, I remember being on your show on Talk where somebody basically who came into the country with a dog then said couldn't be deported because, well, my dog's welfare is important, right? They were going to use anything, and they're going to set new precedents for ways in which to stay in the United Kingdom, which is end up going to, cause more trouble and encourage more people to come, but also cost British taxpayers billions and more over the years as more of these people stay in hotels and then get moved into private rented accommodation and clog up the housing market.
I know. It's absolutely incredible. Some great messages coming through, by the way. Keep them coming. If you'd like to join in the YouTube chat, you can do so, obviously, on YouTube. I think William Yarwood makes a good impression, says John. I think he's making a joke there about Mike Yarwood. Kier Starmer, yeah, very good, well done.
Well, my last name is Yarwood, so,
Thanks for covering the plate. At least Richard's good for something. That's because the plate over there, the Harry and Meghan plate, they're on the front page of the Mail today because of a big row they're having with Netflix. We've covered it with a picture of Richard III, by the way. Netflix's brutal purge of Harry and Meghan. Only a year ago, the Netflix boss was fondly calling the Duchess his rock star, but as Alison Boshoff reveals, things rapidly fell apart, and now the streaming giant is done with the Sussexes. And finally, I think before we let William go, a couple of other stories. Watching from Malta, says Karen. Thank you very much. We'll stick that on. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, says Lord Petrolhead, guys and gals. Yeah, absolutely. Please do that because it helps us move the dial on the old YouTube channel. And somebody was saying they were trying to get in from YouTube Australia, but for some reason it wasn't working. I don't know. I can't help you with that. Is that, yeah. Sorry, Mike. Australian YouTube are trying their best for me, but to comment. Are they? I don't know, David. Well, I can't answer for YouTube Australia. I don't know what they're doing. But one final story. It's in the Telegraph, page 11. A naked sauna down in Swansea. Right. I can't imagine how awful this is. But apparently, it's in somebody's house, and the locals have been complaining that there's been naked people running around in the garden and stuff, and so they've had to shut down this naked sauna in Swansea. And it's one of those kind of Benny Hill style stories, And I was saying to Pooch that there used to be a place in Waterloo that I used to walk past every morning on the way back and forward to work. and it was a kind of a gay naked sauna, presumably. And you'd see these guys going in and out at sort of 9 o'clock in the morning. You're thinking, what sort of a person does that? You know, I can understand if you get a bit, you know, sort of, I don't know, a bit the worse for wear in the afternoon.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
you've been in the pub for a few hours and you go, I don't know, I've got a fancy to pop into the naked sauna. But at 9 o'clock in the morning,
yeah,
you've actually really got to want to do it.
Yeah, you've got to be. Like, how long have you been up?
It's like dedicated.
Waiting for that to be open, standing outside. There's a queue forming outside,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, and also like,
Right.
sorry, do you not have a job to go to?
Well, that's the thing. But they all looked like they were on their way to work.
Yeah.
And you wondered if they'd been made redundant and they hadn't told the wife. You know, they sort of get off the train, coming in from like Warpleston, say, for example. I don't know who that would be. And suddenly going, I'll just pop into the gay sauna for a few hours. I mean, it's a bit
Release
weird,
some
isn't
stress.
it? Yeah, exactly right. Now, one final thing before I let you go.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of people yesterday, they saw you, was it yesterday you were on, or the day before?
Day before, yeah.
And they noticed that you changed your location.
Yes.
Right? And so they said, can you please, next time you see William, can you ask him, has he moved house? Because we used to really like the way that it looked before. Right, with the chest of drawers and the bed and all that, because they love it all. They love all that.
Do they? That's interesting. Yeah. So actually, I was still in my room. I've not moved at all.
Okay.
My room is a bit of a mess at the moment.
Oh, is it? Okay.
That's one of the key reasons. But also, I did see
Murdered anybody?
I did see criticisms from other. No, not yet. I did see. We'll see. You know, they still young, mate. We'll see. One thing I did see in some of the comments was basically people going like, "Oh, is Will in his mum's bed?" You know, is he in his mum's attic? It's like, no, it's my flat in London, which I pay for my own cash, guys.
Yeah.
You know, stop oppressing. You know, as a net contributor and you know, hardworking British taxpayer, fighting for taxpayers' interests. I'm not having people in the comments have a go at me because I can afford to live in a nice place in South West London. Yeah. But yeah, no, I changed it. But
well
also,
said.
On a second point, Michael. So I had been on the lash the previous evening, so I did try. Well, you know, I'm a young man. Well, you always gave me the advice. I need to be burning. You know, I sleep too much. I need to be burning the midnight oil.
It's got to be done.
I got out of bed late and I thought I can't be bothered to turn on my PC.
Brilliant.
Mike doesn't mind. I'll just turn it on my phone.
Listen, you can do whatever you like, as far as I'm concerned. You have an absolute carte blanche. As long as you're able to come on, we love your opinions. We love to hear from you. And Taxpayers Alliance actually got a few mentions yesterday.
Yes,
in the comments, didn't they?
We've been going really hard on fuel duty, and I know we're talking to Howard Coxon a little bit actually, and he's been a big supporter of our campaign. We're advocating for Rachel Reeves to reverse the fuel duty hike in September, stop the hike, and we've had mentions from the Channel Transport Secretary, Katie Lamb, Joy Morrissey. We got a mention at the Desness Committee. It was on the front page of the Daily Express yesterday, which was phenomenal. The cut-through's been excellent, and the pressure, we're just keeping the pressure up, and we've been running a Right to Your MP tool where over 1,000 people have written to their MP to demand their MP to tell Rachel Reeves to demand the hike. And if anyone watching is interested, go to taxpayersalliance.com and find our fuel duty Right to Your MP tool and give your MP a bit of a kicking, because this fuel duty hike is going to affect the poorest and retirees the hardest, and I simply do not think that is fair. No,
you're absolutely right. William, fantastic to see you, as ever. What a great guy. Very much part of the family here at the Mike Graham Show. We are, of course, as we put out yesterday on various different social media outlets, we are launching a new channel. Who knows, maybe the Taxpayers Alliance will have a show on UK Live, which is going to be going out to all of you, so that when we finish this show, we will also bring you other shows as well. Never mind the nonsense. For those of you who are old enough to remember that is like the old Sex Pistols cover for Never Mind the Word. I can't say it, can I? Not allowed. Yes. Can we have that last thing as well? Because this is good. Mike, can you say hi to my father, Jeff, who watches the show every morning from Newport? That's from David in Wales. Well, at least Jeff's in Newport. I know Newport quite well, actually. I used to go to the Celtic Manor there. Very nice stuff. As I say, William Yarwood, thank you very much indeed. We're talking to Howard Cox coming up. Lord Kempsell is going to be here as well to talk about the Chagos Islands, amongst other things. We'll also be talking to Jamie Jenkins from Wales. We'll get some really interesting stats from him, as we always do, about the economy. I think there's some economic stats coming out this morning. And also, we'll get some stats on the immigration figures, which we know are going up rather than down. A man from Kurno says, William's a top man and a great sport. He is, absolutely. He's a man after my own heart. Also on our Substack today, we've just put out a message to all of you, a new feature that we're doing called Ask Mike. I don't know if you've seen this, Pooch, but they've just launched this on Substack. Mike is here exclusively for paid subscribers every 2 weeks. Mike sits down for an exclusive weekend session, answering as many of your questions as he can. Brilliant. Nobody told me about that either. No. So apparently that's what I'm going to be doing. If you've got something on your mind, a big question, a bold opinion, send it in via Substack and hear Mike take it on. There you go, which I think will be good. Absolutely brilliant. Fantastic. Listen, love to hear from all of you. Thank you all for joining us. It's 7:39 in the morning. We'll go through the papers, we'll go through the headlines, we'll go through all manner of things. Coming up next, though, after the news, we're going to be talking to Howard Cox. But first, here's Edward Hughes.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes with your news. The major story dominating UK headlines is a rapidly spreading meningitis outbreak in Kent. Now declared a national incident with around 20 cases confirmed, including 2 tragic deaths. One a University of Kent student and 1 schoolgirl. Health authorities have issued an urgent alert for doctors across England to watch for symptoms, while thousands of students and others queue for vaccinations and antibiotics amid growing concern over its link to a local nightclub. Politically, newspaper front pages scrutinise Labour's migrant plans, while tensions simmer within the party. Chills. Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar reveals he hasn't spoken to PM Kier Starmer since calling for his resignation earlier this year. On the international front affecting the UK, oil and gas prices remain elevated due to the ongoing Middle East conflict involving Iran, raising fears of higher energy bills. That's your news roundup. Please remember to like and subscribe. Latest Tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. Of course, the man has been with us since the very beginning. He's become slightly less whimsical. He's become slightly less disrespectful as well, but that's good. It's a good thing. Lots and lots of you talking about the front pages this morning. The great green British Steel fiasco. We'll get into that in a little while coming up, because it turns out that do you remember Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, who was the former man who said that he was a solicitor when he in fact wasn't. Yeah. He had never qualified as a solicitor, and he pretended to be one for like 10 years, right? They put him in charge of British Steel. It now looks as though British Steel is going down the gurgler because they don't know how to run it. And nobody now mentions the fact that he was put in charge of British Steel, because he's presumably not in charge of British Steel anymore. But one of the big stories at the moment, of course, is what's going on the front pages about Iran. Iran wages economic war on the West, is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail this morning, because basically what the Iranians are doing rather cleverly is that they know they haven't got the firepower to battle America or Israel on the front lines. You know, they've got drones, yes, they've got the ability to sort of fire missiles into the United Arab Emirates and into Israel and into various other countries in the Middle East, including, I think, Riyadh got hit by one yesterday in Saudi Arabia, and, of course, Qatar as well. But what they're doing rather more cleverly is they are paralysing the Straits of Hormuz, thereby stopping oil production and oil kind of shall we say, tankers from getting through. Normally speaking, I think hundreds and hundreds of barrels of tankers would be moving through the Straits of Hormuz, but at the moment it's gone down to sort of less than 10 a day. And what they're saying, in a major escalation of the Middle East crisis, facilities in neighbouring Gulf countries are evacuated as the regime threatens to pummel them with strikes in the coming hours. And of course, what we know is that here in the UK, the result of all of this, oil uncertainty is that the price of petrol has gone up, the price of heating oil has gone up, the price of gas has gone up, and lots of people are saying, if we don't do something about it soon, it will all become completely and utterly unaffordable. We're going to talk now to Howard Cox, the founder of Fair Fuel UK and a member of the Advance UK party as well. Howard, very good morning to you, sir. Good morning, Mike. How are you, mate? Yeah, I'm not bad, because I filled up the car last weekend when it was, I think, 139 for a litre of fuel. I presume it's now probably 149. I don't know. I haven't looked. But it's all a bit uncertain. And Ed Miliband, who is the villain of the piece, as far as I'm concerned, appeared on TV last Sunday. And when he was told, hang on a minute, when you look at the price of a litre of fuel, more than 50% of it is actually going to the government. Why don't you do something about that? He sort of didn't have an answer, did he?
No, well, we know what Ed Miliband's like. He's completely inept. He's clueless. He was just working on his idealistic personal political approach, and I suspect he's probably one of the people queuing up to be leader again. But the thing about this at the moment is that this morning I just looked at the oil price. It's $113 That's something like $30 to $35 more than it was a month ago. So we're looking at something like a 40% increase. Pump prices are going to rocket like mad. They continue to rocket. And particularly for diesel, you've probably seen the difference between petrol and diesel now is between 20 and 30 pence per litre across the country. And there's no reason for that. And yet diesel is the commercial heartbeat of our economy.
Yeah.
Something like over 55% of all fuel that goes into our tanks, particularly the commercial vehicles, is diesel.
Yeah.
And we rely on it. And it impacts on growth, impacts inflation, jobs, you name it. And I've been doing this for 16 years, Mike, as you know. I've been talking to you for, it seems that long. But the thing is, mate, the thing is it's hurting people.
Yes.
And the people like Lib Dem just don't get that.
No. And I seem to remember there was a certain environment minister back in the day who actually recommended that what you should do is buy a diesel car because it was better for the environment and it was cheaper to run. And do you remember who that was by any chance?
Are we going to go back to Gordon Brown days?
Yeah, it was Ed Miliband. Bloody Ed Miliband told us all to get diesel cars because they were more efficient, they were more economical, and they were better for the environment. And now suddenly, if you drive a diesel car, you know they literally want to lock you up and put you in, on the scaffold.
Well, I just got an email, about half an hour ago, of the many I get a day, from a woman who I think she's in her early 80s, and she has to go to have chemotherapy, etc. And she uses those little Peugeot diesel thing, which does 80 miles to the gallon. She relies on it, but it won't qualify to go into London, ULEZ, because it's a Euro 4 status in terms of emissions standard. And the poor woman said,
maybe what she should do is convert it into a mosque and then say, look, it's not a car, it's actually a place of worship, and so therefore I could get an exemption for driving it.
That is a thought, Mark. I'll put that on the front page of my Fairfield UK website, I think.
It is mad, isn't it? But, Khan is absolutely and utterly ruining London in all sorts of ways. He's now looking at, apparently, and sorry to move off the subject for a second, but he's now looking apparently at charging per mile. We had, what was her name? I'm going to say Angie Best, but that was George Best's wife. Emma Best, that's right. One of the deputy leaders of the Conservatives in the London Assembly. And she was trying to get Sadiq Khan to admit that he's looking at charging per mile for particularly people with electric vehicles because he needs to make even more money, And so the more restrictions coming on car drivers, more fees being charged to car drivers, there's no end to it.
Well, you're absolutely right. And there is a whole department now on pay per mile in the London Assembly. It's not hidden at all anymore. And the people, I think there's people in there with sort of six-figure salaries already in there telling us how much they're going to pay per mile. Yeah. It's madness, because how is that ever going to be fair? I mean, when you've got a big truck, they're going to discount a truck that does 7 miles per gallon, that sort of thing, and delivering to shops, etc. But are we going to keep ULEZ? Are we going to keep congestion charge? I stood for London Mayor, and I would have got rid of all of that, and would have got rid of all the stupid cycle lanes as well.
Sure.
I was in a cab yesterday with the salt of the earth black cab drivers, and he said to me, why the hell didn't you win the bloody election out? Look what we got to. But this is an exclusive for you, Mike. I'm actually talking with legal counsel, several barristers, to talk about actually going for Sadiq Khan for lying to get ULEZ in place. I've got a lot of evidence now to prove that he used evidence which he actually fixed. And I don't care if he goes back with me, here's this report, I don't care.
Yeah,
but we're going to go for it, because we've got to get rid of this man, because he's wrecking out.
Like we used to say, I'd be very welcome to take Sadiq Khan into a courtroom and put him on the stand under oath, and ask him some questions that he'd have to answer truthfully, as opposed to obfuscating like he does all the time in the chamber, almost as bad as Kier Starmer yesterday when he gets asked, did you talk to Peter Mandelson or not? And he goes, I don't talk about the process. And, he can't answer the bleeding question. And Khan has avoided answering questions for the best part of about 7 years, and everybody knows, as you say, that he's fixed the evidence, he's manipulated the facts to try and draw them closer to his way of thinking, and he simply needs to be put on the spot.
Well, we saw what he's had, to actually make London, the Trafalgar Square, the home of the Muslims, to sit there and pray. For God's sake, our country, I don't reckon, I'm a London, I was born in Lewisham, southeast London. Yeah. You know the area very well, Mike. Yeah. I know you do not, that sort of thing. And I go back there now and I don't recognise it whatsoever. And I very rarely hear, I'm going to be called a racist now, I very hear an English accent anywhere. down there, and it's so sad. And that's not being racist. It's just that I want our traditional Christian culture, Christian values to be recognised. But equally, I recognise that immigration has helped this country, but not to the level it is at the moment, and that's the problem. And I'm afraid we got too many people right across the country. We've got so many Muslim mayors across the country. We are being invaded. We are being,
But isn't part of the problem as well, though, Howard? Part of the problem is that we, as a nation, and it's not an ethnic thing, have kind of let this happen in a way, because what we haven't done is turned up at local elections to vote. If you look at all of those Muslim mayors all over the country, you'll probably find that they were elected on a minority of votes in that particular place, in that particular constituency, because if you're lucky, you get a 50% turnout local election, and all you need then is 27% of the votes from that 50% cohort, and suddenly you get in.
Spot on, Mike. I mean, you look at national turnout all the way down to sort of local elections, even down to Paris elections. You're looking at something like 40 to 45% of the country just can't be bothered anymore to do this. Most of those people are decent, honest, tax-paying British people that have just given up on our political system. They don't believe there's a democracy in this country, so they don't bother to go out because they don't think their vote counts, which is very, very sad. And, I regularly tell people you can't moan about something if you haven't voted.
No, exactly right. And so therefore, maybe this is a bit of a wake-up call to people, because people always say to me, I never meet anyone in London who voted for Sadiq Khan. How does he keep getting re-elected? And you kind of go, I don't know the answer to that. But I sort of really do know the answer to that. It's because a lot of people don't bother to go out and vote.
Well, I've told you this before. When I was campaigning in London in 2024 for the London Mayoral, I went past a particular place not far from Whitechapel, and I was walking down the road campaigning with my colleagues, it was good, people shaking hands, etc. And this guy came out of his shop. He's a newsagent on the corner shop, and he was a Pakistani, lovely bloke, absolutely great. He went to shake my hand, and he said, "Can I have a photograph with you, a selfie?" He said, "Yeah, I'd love to. Can I have your vote?" He said, "Oh, no, I'm voting for Sadiq Khan. And I've got here my 12 voting cards."
Unbelievable. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. So what happens now in terms of, as I said, when they put it to him on Sunday, the BBC actually did quite a good job. They did. I don't know if we've still got that graph, the pie chart, Pooch, but 38% of the petrol price now at the pump is a fuel tax. Another, I think 12% or 13% or so is VAT on top of that, which they actually put on top of the tax, right? So it's a sort of double tax. Right. If the government wanted to reduce the price for people so that they could find it easier, there we go. Wholesale costs 33%, 6% the retailer's margin. Actually, I'm wrong. It's 17% VAT. So you're talking, 48, 50, 55% of what you pay for petrol at the pump goes to the government, right? I saw a story the other day that said that Rachel Reeves is going to benefit to the tune of about 3 billion quid because of the oil price rise, because she's going to be able to put windfall tax on the energy companies, on the price of oil, and on the price of petrol and all the rest of it. So it's sort of in their interest right now to allow the price to continue to rise because the government makes more money. So what do we do?
Well, there's a number of things. I mean, it's happened in the last couple of days. Something like 30,000 of my supporters have written to the MP, your previous Taxpayers Alliance guy. They've been doing that. I mean, they used to leave it to me on fuel duty, but I'm delighted they've come on board at last after 16 years to take this on. But what we can do is actually, he's right, contact their MP. In the last few days, my lot of Fair Fuel UK have bombarded their local MP to say, one of the two big things we want is one of them is to take VAT off fuel duty. That would knock 10 pence off. It doesn't sound a lot, but that's £5 per average family car that would be taking it off. And the other one is actually the little thing on your graph there. You had 33% goes to wholesalers. Yeah. And that 33%, we've got to stop the fuel supply chain involved in opportunistic profiteering. As you probably know, I did a lot of media last week, and I stood outside a garage in Tunbridge Wells. One was a BP, one was a Shell. Both of them had different prices for everything, but we went into the film crew, and I went in to talk to the people behind the till, and they said, we're putting up diesel and petrol day by 2 to 3 pence. I said, you're getting a delivery then? Oh no, we don't get a delivery for another couple of days. So they're putting money up, the prices up on existing fuel they've already paid for.
Yes,
and that's what's got to stop.
That's wrong.
It's in the remit of Rachel Reeves and this government to stop that opportunistic profiteering.
Mm.
That and cut the tax on the VAT, cut fuel duty by about 5 to 10p, and watch the economy bloom. It'd be phenomenal what it would do to the economy.
Absolutely. Howard, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Howard Cox there, founder of Fair Fuel UK, on the subject of the price of petrol. Some of you sending in what you're seeing out there on the forecourt, so do continue to do that, and we'll continue to. I mean, I did this once before, 171 in Truro, Cornwall. I presume that's for diesel, Sarah. 165, says Chris, for diesel where he lives. Yeah, so the diesel in Shropshire, 170 per litre. So it's creeping up towards, £2 per litre, which is kind of where it got to, I think, under the original auspices of the first few weeks of the war in Kiev, in Ukraine. And it is absolutely extraordinary. We've got a poll going on, of course, today, which bears no resemblance at all to the price of petrol, but it does bear resemblance to the state of our nation and the state of our defences. What is Britain's main source of defence, is the question. And it comes, of course, from, I think, Colin Robertson, once again, who sent this in. If you ever want to do a poll for us, you can do the same. Send it in to us on Substack or by another means. HMS Dragon, 5%. Airfix drone kits, 20%. Starmer's laser focus, 22%. And potholes on the beaches, 54%. Yeah, I mean, seriously, we have no defences here. We have literally nothing. If somebody decided to invade us, and I mean militarily, not just by sending a lot of young men on boats, illegally to come into our shores on dinghies, basically, at the end of the day, we have nothing. We could not stop an invading force. We haven't got enough members of the army. We haven't got enough members of the armed forces. We don't have a navy really to speak of. We've got a pretty decent air force in terms of the people who fly the fighter jets and all of that. But there's not very many of them. And so we literally don't have any defences. Unlike the Middle East, unlike Israel, which has got an Iron Dome system, unlike the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, which has also got an Iron Dome system that can stop missiles raining down on the populace. We don't have any of that. We would be absolutely skewed and skewered if somebody decided to come and try and take over the country, which can't be a good place to be, can it? Coming up, Nick Buckley's going to join us. We're going to be talking to him up in Manchester to see what's going on up there. Charlie Tango says a super chat. Thank you very much, Charlie. Charlie again says, Mike Graham, respect. God bless you, my friend. That's very kind of you. Yeah. Thank you. And then again. Makes me, and yet again, another one. Blimey. I'm not Jen. Goodbye. What does that mean? No. Jen. I don't know, Charlie, but thank you. Watching from Malta, says Karen. Malta's a good place. It's one of those places you can go and move to where they don't have any corporation tax or income tax, I don't think. Red Rock says, my upcoming new podcast, Aggrieved or Applauding. Would love to be involved in the new UK live thing. Well, Red Rock, just get in touch with Pooch, who's in charge of all of these matters. UK Live is coming. It's going to be a new channel. It's going to be uncensored. It's going to be unfiltered. It's going to be for real British opinions, people with interesting things to say, interesting thoughts to have. We're going to try and fire up the phone lines. We're going to try and get people involved. We're going to be talking to you around the clock. So it won't just be Mike Graham's Breakfast Show anymore. It will be Mike Graham's Breakfast Show, followed by a whole bunch of other great shows, including a show with me and Kelvin McKenzie on it. Russell Quirk is going to be involved, we think. And there's lots of other, irons in the fire, which we are currently negotiating with various different broadcasters. Very many talented people who want to be part of it. And pretty much every day now I get a call from people saying, could I possibly talk to you about doing a show? People want to do it, because they want to be part of something. Because it's a revolution, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Mike Graham revolution. And we're going to have a great time. There once was a man, Miliband, who pushed for net zero so grand. He talked day and night, a big load of while bills got a touch out of hand. Seaside Babe, thank you very much indeed. Very, very mellifluous, that. I like it. We're trying not to swear, right? I'll tell you why we don't want to swear. And I know some of you have said, yeah, just swear away, man. Do it. The problem with swearing on YouTube is that what happens is that they then categorise the show in a different way, and they make it over 18s only, which obviously means that therefore it's got a limited audience. And we obviously want to go to as many people as we possibly can. So we'd like to ask you, if you do send us messages, or if you do eventually do voice notes, as we will do soon, and if you do eventually ring in, please don't swear. I know there's a certain liberated feel to be able to swear, but actually it's detrimental to the channel. So that's why we're not doing it. So if that makes sense, please forgive us. Coming up, we're going to talk to Nick Buckley. But first, should we do Pooch's Pooch?
Do you want to do that now? Yeah.
I think we can. It's a nice little breaker, isn't it? Have a look.
Let's do it.
Isn't that beautiful? It gives you faith in, I was going to say faith in humanity. It's actually faith in dogs as opposed to humanity. But it is wonderful, beautiful. We'll continue to do that. We'll come up with another one, actually. Maybe we'll do two today. Yeah. One at the end of the show to cheer people up, because it really does cheer people up. One of the stories that will also be cheering people up is on the front of the Sun today. Gary Glitter apparently is on his last legs. What a pity. You know, could we have a double whammy? You know, Ian Huntley goes and then Gary Glitter follows shortly thereafter. Pop pedo Gary Glitter on his last legs. He spends most of his days holed up in his jail cell. Apparently, he's almost totally deaf and deeply troubled by money woes. Good. Well, I mean, I suppose if you had to listen to, you want to be in my gang for years and years and years, you'd prefer to be deaf, wouldn't you? I mean, it's pretty awful. Dreadful song. Anyway, let's talk to Nick Buckley, who, of course, was the Advance UK MP, MP wannabe, I should say, up in Gorton and Denton. Gorton and Denton, of course, in the end, won by the Green Party, which is, you know, not good news for anyone, really. Nick, very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. How are you today, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. Very well, very well. So, Hannah Spencer is now representing you in Westminster. What has she done for you lately, would be my first question.
Well, I think she's created a whole new fashion trend of pastel colours. So
Yes.
she looks like Warner Brothers, the Joker. She dresses like the Joker.
Right. She does. I mean, when she first turned up in Westminster and she was met by that woman who's a Green MP already, whose name I forget, who was wearing purple, somebody went, you know, I don't fancy to look at the new Teletubbies series, because that's what they look like, isn't it? Carla Denyer, I think her name is.
Yeah. That's the name of the other woman. It's a joke what she wears, but she can wear what she can wear. I mean, that's not the big deal. The big deal is the Greens won. The Greens are the most mental party in the UK, mainstream UK, and they actually won. And even worse than that, the left wing of politics won that election. If you add the Labour votes, the Lib Dem votes, and the Green votes, they were like, you know, 65-70% of people voted left, far left. I just don't understand why.
No, and that is a kind of really interesting point that you make, because obviously people are worried about extrapolating that in the general election. Would it be the case that that Labour would die a terrible death because their own sort of constituency, if you like, is moving to the left because they are perceived to have moved to the centre? I mean, I don't know anyone in their right mind who thinks Kier Starmer's in the centre, because he's clearly not. But it is worrying, isn't it? Because you've got this kind of cohort of the Muslim vote on the one hand and the young vote on the other hand, who would all like to basically tax you into the sea and say, if you're a landlord, you know, you're an evil person. If you've got money, you should give it all up and give it to the government. Zach Polanski, I think, is a con man. And I just fear that because if the right does get split in a way, that somehow you'll end up with the Greens being far more powerful than they really should be.
Yeah, there's a good chance we could have the next government could be a red and green coalition. A coalition between Labour and the Greens is a real possibility if they can coalesce around something. Both those parties are fighting for the Muslim vote, who are going to be the deciders of who becomes the next Prime Minister. And you talked about the biggest issue we have a minute ago with Howard Cox, and that is the people who don't vote. Over 52% of the electorate didn't turn out to vote at this by-election, and the same number didn't turn out at the general election. And they're just the people who could vote but didn't. We also have thousands of people who are not even registered to vote.
Yes.
And the reason why we've got this problem is they've given up on democracy, because over the last 30, 40 years, however long, people have realised democracy isn't working in their interest. I have had many people say to me on the streets when I was campaigning, I like you, Nick. I like what you're saying, but I'm still not going to vote because I've met people like you before, and you all turn out to be liars. And I'm sick of being made to feel like a fool by voting for people who lied to me. So therefore, I'm still not voting. And years ago, I used to blame people like that and go, "Oh, idiots! Why don't you vote?" But I've got to a stage now where I say to them, "I completely agree.
Yeah.
You know, the system's let you down, and you rejected. Why would you want to take part in a system that holds you in contempt, that never delivers anything for you, and thinks you're an idiot? Why would you vote in that system?"
No, true. Were you disappointed by your vote at Kent? Because you had a much lower number of people voting for you than I think you would have expected, didn't you?
Oh, hugely disappointed.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to be honest. It was embarrassingly low. There's no other way around it. The Monster Raving Loony Party got 5 more votes than me.
Right.
And I've had to think about that. I mean, I probably would have done better as an independent. I did quite well in the mayoral election 18 months ago. Why we did so poorly was I'm not making excuses. I did really, 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 really poorly. I get that. But the reason behind it, I think, is this. First of all, it was a very short campaign. It was 4 weeks. It took us a week to get off the ground. So my campaign was really 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You can't do anything in 3 weeks. Advance UK is a brand new party. Hardly anyone had heard of Advance UK. So that's a hindrance. And by the time we joined the race itself had turned into reform against the Greens. You were being told, vote Green or you're going to get the evil Nazi reform, which they're not. And the other side was saying, vote reform, otherwise you're going to get the mental drug legalizing Greens. So it turned into a 2-horse race very early on. And we just couldn't break through that conversation, that narrative.
Yeah. And so is that something that you think Advance UK can improve upon the longer that they're around? Because I wonder about, when you and I spoke before the election, you said, the Ben Habib kind of idea, the party is an alternative to reform for those people who don't like the way reform is kind of becoming a bit more mainstream than they wanted it to be. But does that mean that Advance isn't really cutting through? Does it mean that, there's a lot more work to do? Or does it mean that the people who do know about it aren't that keen on it?
Most people I spoke to had never heard of Ben Habib, had never heard of Advance UK. So that's a real issue. But again, I think we're only 2-3 months old as a registered political party. It's going to take several years. This isn't going to happen overnight. This can't happen just on Twitter and Facebook. Advance UK have to build a ground game, and that's happening now. Setting up branches, getting people leafleting, even when there's not an election. You can't wait for an election and start putting leaflets through people's doors. There's not enough time. That has to start now. And we'll see how well Advance does, because don't forget, no political party has a God-given right to exist or do well. Parties have to earn it. Parties have to develop that trust with the electorate. And if you look at, the latest new party, or fairly latest, Reform, Reform is 6 years old now. It took Reform 4.5 years before they hit anything at an election, really. So it takes time. But we've also got Restore Britain now. They've come on the scene. We'll see how they do at coming elections. And
what's your bet on how they do? Because I think they're not quite as important as, say, Rupert Lowe thinks they are.
Well, I wouldn't take my assessment of the opinion. I'd take it with a pinch of salt, because I thought I was going to do okay at the by-election. So don't ever listen to me when I say what's going to happen in the future. We will see. Brand new. They've got, they're going a different way. I'm glad they've set up, because we need new parties, we need new ideas, we need new opinions. But it's down to the electorate, and this time next year we'll know how Restore are doing, because they would have stood at some elections in the next year, and then we will know what the public think of them.
Yeah. Okay. Nick, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Nick Buckley there, MBE, stood in Gorton and Denton for the Advance UK party. Didn't do as well as he would have liked to have done. Didn't do very well at all, as he said himself. The Monster Raving Loony Party got 5 more votes than they did. Coming up, we've got lots to do. Jamie Jenkins is going to join us. We'll get from him some latest statistics on the economy, which are coming out this morning. Also, we'll ask him about the migrant boat numbers, because it looks as though there's more people coming here in the first 3 months of the year so far this year than there were at the same time last year, which tells you that the stopping the boats or smashing the gangs scenario isn't working terribly well. We're going to talk to Ross Kempsell coming up later on in the show as well, my Lord Kempsell, you'd have to say. And also, keep your ideas coming through, keep your thoughts coming through. OK, I'm off to the naked sauna. Oh no, wait, says John. Yeah, it's been shut. You don't want to go there. There's always keep your clothes on. Because there's nothing worse than taking all your clothes off, expecting to be able to go into a naked sauna, only to find that you can't get in the door and you're stuck. Khan investing in super cameras to find even more people, says Tanya. Yeah, I know. Absolutely shocking. Shocking. Let's get some news, I think, with Edward Hughes.
The Conservatives are now the party of high tax. On their watch, the tax burden is the highest in 70 years. I worked as an economist at the Bank of England before entering politics. I know what it
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes with your news. The major story dominating UK headlines is a rapidly spreading meningitis outbreak in Kent. Now declared a national incident with around 20 cases confirmed, including 2 tragic deaths. One a University of Kent student and 1 schoolgirl. Health authorities have issued an urgent alert for doctors across England to watch for symptoms, while thousands of students and others queue for vaccinations and antibiotics amid growing concern over its link to a local nightclub. Politically, newspaper front pages scrutinise Labour's migrant plans, while tensions simmer within the party. Chilbs. Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar reveals he hasn't spoken to PM Kier Starmer since calling for his resignation earlier this year. On the international front affecting the UK, oil and gas prices remain elevated due to the ongoing Middle East conflict involving Iran, raising fears of higher energy bills. That's your news roundup. Please remember to like and subscribe. Latest, Tigers.
Edward Hughes there with the news. Thank you very much indeed. It's time now to speak to our favourite statistician, former member.
He's gone.
He's gone. Where's he gone? Well, he's probably gone for a cup of tea or something. But don't worry, because he's going to be telling us all about the new job statistics that are out this morning, I understand. Basically, at 7 a.m, we were told what the new job statistics were. He's also going to talk to us about the state of the nation in terms of Brexit, in terms of the lack of growth, in terms of what's going wrong with the country. And of course, what Jamie's really good at is actually taking the raw data and melting it down and making sense of it. Right, that's what he's really good at. And what I will do before we get him on, and as we wait, is to run through some of the stories on the front pages this morning. To wit, on the front page of the Daily Mail, Iran wages economic war on the West. We've got British military plan to reopen the Straits of Hormuz on the Times. We've got Kemi skewering the Prime Minister over Peter Mandelson, which we played you a little bit earlier. We've also got the migrant rules, which were put in place by Kier Starmer, which were going to be apparently, according to Shabana Mahmood, going to make it more difficult for migrants to actually come to this country because we wouldn't grant them the ability to stay, leave to remain and all of that. We wouldn't let them do that. It turns out that's all going to be watered down thanks to Angela Rayner, who has apparently decided to make her sort of presence felt as a possible new leader of the Labour Party, because Kier Starmer is frankly floundering around in a way which is actually quite now embarrassing. He was asked 6 times yesterday as to whether or not he actually ever spoke to Peter Mandelson in person or on the telephone about his appointment to be a US ambassador, and he wouldn't answer and couldn't answer the question. Absolutely unbelievable. Jamie's here. Jamie, very good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Mike. You doing good?
Yeah, very well. We did that perfect thing where just as we were expecting to come to you, you disappeared off to go make yourself a cup of tea, so never mind.
My son was pestering me for some toast this morning, Mike.
Toast?
Toast it was.
Can you afford to put anything on the toast?
Well, my eating bill's gone up. I think that cost of doing the toast is about 10 times what it was last week, I think.
I know. It's absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? Extraordinary. There were some job stats coming out this morning. I've not seen them. If they have come out, can you tell us about them?
Yeah, so it's not as bad as it's been in previous months, Mike, but it's not as great. So the key headlines is if we take the latest figures, we're 49,000 jobs down on what we had this time last year. Right. 1.9 million unemployed. So the unemployment rate's 5.2%. It's the same as what it was last, but it's still creeping upwards. But it's not another percentage point there. Vacancies are down, so people trying to find jobs. That's a bit of a struggle for them as well. Yeah. The disparity continues now between private sector and public sector pay. So pay growth is down across the economy. The private sector is going up about 3.5%, but the public sector is at 5.9%. And what that really tells you, Mike, is that when the economy's struggling, the private sector need to make those cuts quicker because obviously they hit in the pocket, whereas the public sector, you just keep dishing out the pay rises because it's coming out of the taxpayers' money.
Right.
And remarkably, so public sector is at a record high, public sector employment. Central government employment is at a record high. So the government just keeps employing more and more people to work for them, whilst the private sector is having to cut because of the state of the economy.
But that's the problem, isn't it? Everywhere you look, if you're looking for a job in the public sector, there's loads of jobs to be had in the public sector, and they're all rather well paid because, and they've also got great conditions, they've got great perks, many of them will say work from home 2 days a week, don't worry about coming in, it's not a problem. And we'll pay you 50 grand a year, maybe 70 grand a year. It's unbelievable. But as you say, the reason there are fewer opportunities for most people in the private sector is because private sector companies simply aren't offering jobs because they can't afford to hire people.
Yeah, they're coming down. Hospitality's been massively impacted, Mike, and we've talked about that previously. And what have we heard from Rachel Reeves this week, Mike? She's saying we need closer ties with the European Union. I think Sadiq Khan's come out overnight, I think, Mark, an interview in some, I think, an Italian newspaper or something, saying that the Labour Party should campaign at the next general election to rejoin the European Union. And if Labour wins the next general election, they don't need another referendum. We're back in, literally. And he wants to join the single market customs union. So these Labour politicians, Mike, are absolute nonsense. And the US is growing quite well. Consumer spending's up in the US. Employment's growing in the US. You don't need ties to the European Union. You want to work with the European Union, of course, if people want to sell stuff there. But France and Germany are crawling along. But the Labour Party seem to think, let's have closer ties with Europe and everything is going to be fixed. I wrote on my Substack yesterday, Mike, that if the Labour Party want to understand what's really going on in the economy, Reeves needs to look more in the mirror than look to Europe.
Yeah, exactly right. Because that's the problem. I mean, we seem to be rehearsing all the same arguments that we were doing back in sort of, 2015, 2016 about why it's a good idea to leave or it's a good idea to stay. They don't seem to have moved on. And you're kind of going, do you not realise that actually if you look at the economies of most of the European countries like Germany, like France, like Italy, like Spain, they're actually worse off than the UK is, and that's saying something.
Yeah, and what the European Union struggles with is similar to us, is these high energy costs. So if you take UK's energy costs are higher than France and Germany, but then the UK, it's not much of a difference, but we are higher. But you take the UK and you compare that to, say, the US for industrial energy prices, it's like a quarter of the cost. So Reeves was talking about in his speech a couple of days ago, Mike, about the UK becoming an AI superpower. And, if you're going to run a business and you're going to put AI somewhere and all these data centers, you're not going to be putting them in the UK, and these data centers can work anywhere. So I think the only thing we need, Mike, is an AI superpower to run this government, because recent I'd rather ChatGPT's going up with government policy.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I was reading a story or hearing a story yesterday that Meta, the company that runs Facebook and Instagram, Mark Zuckerberg's, new sort of face of modernity, is apparently sacking 20% of their workforce to pay for AI, right? So, I mean, it's not going to be the great sort of employer that everybody might think. Yes, if we were to become an AI superpower, it might well be that somehow we would make money from the tax revenue. However, we would not be employing a lot of people because it doesn't need a lot of people to run it.
No, I was listening to a story the other day with Meta and AI as well. Like, so obviously when you go on like Facebook and Instagram, you get a lot of these reels, and they're addictive to some people. They can spend, rather than watch the BBC, they just flick on their phone. And what they're using now, Mike, is AI content to create all the reels. So all the people who are actually making stuff, they'll cut them out. So basically, Meta get their own AI to create all the reels using AI. So they basically get all the advertising money, but they haven't got to pay any of the content creators. So there are some positives to AI, but there are a lot of negatives in terms of this as well. But that's why shows like yourself, Mike, I'm waiting for the AI Mike Graham to sit in for you when you're on a holiday. I keep saying,
well, he won't be as good, though. He won't be as good.
Yeah, you wouldn't be as good. But you're the hardest working person. You never take any holidays, mate. You actually have any holidays this year? Are you planning anything?
No, I can't. Well, because I've just started a new business. You know, I can't afford to go away. It's not happening. I mean, all my family are all going, where are we going? I'm like, well, you guys will have to go on your own. You'll have to just disappear. You know, at the end of the day, I can't take any time off until we've got this thing up and running properly. And yes, there will be a time when somebody sits in for me, but it's not yet, and it's probably not going to happen before the summer, you know. In fact, Pooch and I might have to go on holiday together so that we can actually do the show from wherever we are. So when do you fancy going, Pooch? Just bring the kit with us. We're going to come down to that naked sauna down in Swansea, see if we can reopen it. Have you been down there lately, or have you given that up?
Well, I think some people might be thinking I was late on this morning, so I was down the naked sauna.
I thought you possibly popped down there, you know, you could pick up your trousers.
But what you can do, Mike, literally technology is so good. All you need is a mobile phone and a microphone. So you and Pooch can go off to Ibiza. I think Radio
this is
1.
the great joy now of new media, right? I was actually talking to an old mucker of mine from News UK yesterday, and you know, it's so cumbersome. Trying to do anything inside a big corporation is so difficult. We're now, you know, we literally, I mean, if I said to Pooch, like, what do you fancy? We were next Monday, let's go to your place in France and broadcast from there. The sun's coming out, we can jump in the pool afterwards, bring the dogs, you know, drive around, you know, have a couple of nice meals in the evening. And we could do that. But you try and do that when you work for a big corporation like News UK, and you'd have to have it signed off about 55 different people. You'd have to have a budget allocated. You have a budget, you know, heading so that you could, you know, allocate all the costs. You know, it's ridiculous. And I think that's kind of strangling British innovation, because companies don't work anymore.
No, and that's true, Mike. And if you do go over to France to record the show, if you can't get a flight home, just come back on one of the small boats, because I assume what's the weather like over where you are? I just looked on Dover, Mike. It's got, on the BBC weather app in the Met Office, it's got sun. You know, miraculously the rain's gone for a few days. So I would imagine this time next week when we're talking, we'll be talking about numbers of people coming over on small boats. And I think that other story you were talking about this morning with watering down this permanent settlement scheme for Shabana Mahmood, the facts are quite stark on this, Mike, in terms of why do we need to do it. So if you take 1981 to 2007 and you look at net migration to the UK, it was 2.2 million people. So that's 1981 all the way across to 2007. 26 years, 2.2 million. And then in between 2021 and 2024, so just 3 years, we had 2.3 million people. So that's why this is quite an emergency here, because and that's just the net figure. So when you talk about the kind of the gross figure, the numbers that came in, that's why the government needs to act, because you've got such a large bulge of the population that came in, and they're talking about this permanent settlement. But the government, as I say, they're in paralysis mode. They can't get anything through. Rayner's talking, I think, yesterday about coming in and taking over the country after Starmer's booted out, probably after the May elections. Just imagine Angela Rayner, Prime Minister of this country, Mike. You know, you've had loads of content using Kier Starmer. God knows what it's going to be like with Angela Rayner if she ever got in power.
Oh, I know. Absolutely ridiculous. But talking about migrants, I was hearing that obviously once the weather turns nice, as it has done this week for the first time really this year, you know, the number is going to increase. We've already got, I believe, somewhere in excess of 3,000 plus people that have come over since the beginning of January, more than there were at the beginning of the year last year, because we're about to sort of move into the... is that dog barking?
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
The Pooch has gone live. Yeah. And so... you know, the numbers will simply go up between now and, say, you know, the middle of September. And we've also got a watering down, on the front pages today in the Times and Telegraph, a watering down of the Shabana Mahmood plan to make it more difficult for people to get, you know, British citizenship effectively and leave to remain. Because Angela Rayner's been out on manoeuvres, basically saying you're going to have to get rid of that, because I'm not going to vote for it, and I'm going to make sure that the left part of the party isn't going to go for it.
Yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me, Mike, because they said they were going to rejoin the customs union and stuff because it wasn't in their manifesto, but they seem to do everything else that's not in their manifesto. I wouldn't trust anything, but that is pretty much it. What's going on in the country at the moment is, you know, we had the figures, I think yesterday, I think on the Sun, we're talking about the PIP payments, you know, disability payments.
Yeah.
Number of people doubled in about 7 years on those. They tried to tackle the benefits bill, but the backbenchers wouldn't allow them. They've gone tough on immigration, partly because Reform are talking tough on immigration. Oh, well, let's keep some of our voters. But Rayner doesn't want that. So when you've got a government that can't do anything, people keep saying to me, or they comment on some of my stuff on social media, Mike, and they say, oh, we'll have a general election soon. And you've talked about there'll be a general election soon. May the 7th will be a reckoning, because what will happen is a lot of the councillors for Labour will lose their seats. Those are the activists. They're the door knockers for Labour when it comes to general elections. They struggle with those. But if you think Rayner would lose her role, Streeting would lose her role, these people don't want to lose their jobs, Mike. So are they going to call a general election? But I can't see any future currently for the Labour Party. The best thing that is going on in the country at the moment is Starmer's destroying the Labour Party. And that is the important thing that we got to remember in this, Mike. But this right to remain and stuff, they can't get it through, Mike, because literally Rayner is calling the shots now because the backbenchers will follow her instead of going for Starmer.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's only one man in Britain, right, who thinks Starmer's doing a good job. Can you guess who it is?
Starmer?
No, even he, I think, is convinced that he's not doing a good job. It's James O'Brien. You know, that complete numpty that sits over in Leicester Square for a company called LBC. Have a look at this, right? This is James O'Brien's take. And I'm going to have to do that in order to, this is how he talks on the microphone. Have a look.
I think they're doing well. I think, but the problem is I also hope that the course he's plotted over Iran has changed the way people look at Kier Starmer and actually given him a status, a statesmanship status that he had in opposition, but which he had managed to perhaps lose grip of, not squander, but he'd managed to lose grip of it in power. I saw him this week not only essentially telling Donald Trump to do one, to take a running jump, but also the way in which he greeted Volodymyr Zelensky at Downing Street yesterday. We have a Prime Minister for the first time probably since, I'll give David Cameron a break here. We have a Prime Minister who looks like a world leader.
So James O'Brien actually thinks Kier Starmer's doing a good job. It's quite extraordinary.
Well, yeah, and the thing with that clip, Mike, he talks about him being a good world leader, and you need to have allies. So I talked earlier tonight about the US economy is doing well. Any trade deals, any hook in with the US is absolutely shot at the moment because we're a laughing stock. He thinks he's a good world leader. And that's the problem with many people on the left, Mike. They're very blinkered. You see the politicians, the Labour politicians will tweet that Rachel Reeves' economic plan is working, Starmer's doing a great job. Well, you just got to look at the facts and the figures that I come on the show to talk about that shows the economic plan isn't working. You know, the whole foreign policy, trying to get that boat over to the Middle East or to help Cyprus, Mike, that was an absolute shambles. We're a laughing stock on the world stage. We got no credibility, Mike. You know, if Starmer walks into the Oval Office, he has no gravitas. They don't want to listen to him, do they, Mike? And that's why they won't even invite him there.
Yeah, absolutely right. Listen, we're really stuck for time today, Jamie. So, but listen, as ever, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. You feel free to pop down to Swansea again, when you get the chance, and report. And you also might want to come up to London for this, which is of course our live show. The Dog's back. A live show coming up May the 6th, Shepherd's Bush Empire. We've got a new name to add to the list. We've got Right Said Fred coming, Lewis MacLeod, who's the great impressionist, and also Carol Decker now from Tapau is going to be there. I can't guarantee that she's going to sing China in My Hand, but she will be there to answer any questions that people may put to her. But Jamie, listen, have a great weekend if we don't see you before. Coming up, of course, Plank of the Week. We're going to be filming it later on today. I'm delighted to say that we're now joined, though, by Lord Ross Kempsell. Ross, how are you, man?
How are you doing? Good to see you.
Very good to see you. Very well indeed. You were up late last night in the chamber.
Never not
amazing,
up late.
Amazing that you'd think I was up watching you. I wasn't, but I have got the clip, and I think we've got the clip. This is about digital ID. Pooch is at the moment doing about 55 different things. He's making coffee. He's looking after that dog outside. Have you got the clip of Ross in the chamber? Here he is.
Take him back to a slightly more fundamental question, which we're yet to address. In this exchange, which is why the government feels it's necessary at all to have a consultation given the visceral public reaction that there was to the proposal to introduce digital ID in the first place. And that in itself seems like a pretty convincing consultation. And we all know that the government politically has stepped back from its original plan on digital ID and wound back to this position because of that reaction. Secondly, just very briefly on the form of the consultation itself when it comes to the 100-person panel, it sounds very novel. Has the Noble Lord the Minister got any assurances that he can give on the control that there will be overspending in that process and whether it will be value for money compared to other forms of consultation? And lastly, digital ID is one of a large number of policies that the government seems very determined to introduce, despite the fact that it wasn't in the Labour Party's manifesto at the last general election. Can he account for that fact and explain why the government is determined to bring it forward when there is no mandate for this government to do so?
There he is, at work, Ross Campsell, working hard for you, as they say, in the chamber. I haven't actually ever said to you, what an amazing thing to have been made a Lord and to be able to go into those red benches and actually have an impact on, legislation as it's being made, the work you've done on the Chagos Islands, the ability to actually have a direct and really quite important effect on the way that the country's run.
Well, that's very kind of you, mate. I mean, we're trying to, and there's lots of good peers in the House of Lords who are trying to take off the worst excesses of what the government's trying to do. It's actually because of the state of the House of Commons with such a big majority with Labour. You can't stop the government doing anything in the House of Commons at all. Right. So it's almost as if.
Although they manage to stop themselves, don't they, by just U-turning on everything?
yeah, absolutely. And the only person who can stop the Labour government's progress on its own legislative agenda is Kier Starmer, of course, because he manages to do that somehow. But if you're an MP in the House of Commons, a backbench MP, it's tough to make an impact. I mean, apart from representing your constituents and what's happening locally, on the national agenda, Labour's got this big majority, so it can get whatever it likes through the Commons. But when the bills come to the House of Lords, it's the only place left where there are some sensible voices, not all of them, by no means all of them, and there's a huge amount wrong with the House of Lords in my view. But there are sensible voices there who are shaving off the worst of some of what Labour is doing. Right. Although, of course, you can only ever take off 1, 2, 3, 5% of what is happening. Yes. Because the Chamber's not elected. It should really be the House of Commons doing that, and we won't fix the current situation until we have a general election and get new MPs.
And you were talking about digital ID there. I mean, I think a lot of people would probably say what's actually going on with that bill, because nobody's really quite sure, because they do they see a flurry of activity about digital ID, and you see the government kind of backing off from it and saying, oh, now it's not going to be compulsory, but is it really going to affect an awful lot of people? What's actually happening with it?
Yeah, the government kind of did a FAFO where it introduced digital ID by just saying it was going to happen without any real consultation. Yeah. And then suddenly they realised that nobody supported that. And whether it was in the newspaper, in the media, or whether it was in public opinion polls, they worked out pretty quickly there was a majority against compulsory digital ID at any rate. So they had to back down. What the government's doing now is saying it's going to have a consultation process about digital ID. But they're using this new form of consultation, which is quite interesting. So usually in a consultation, the department opens its processes to people to write in, you email or whatever, and you say what you think about this. The Labour are now proposing that they're going to select 100 people randomly from across the country by their postcode, like the postcode lottery or something. Oh, yeah. And those people will be asked what they think of digital ID, which is an interesting new form of consultation. But interesting that the minister in the House of Commons who's responsible for this, Darren Jones, the so-called chief secretary to the Prime Minister, who's basically Starmer's right-hand man, he said on the record in the Commons that he was convinced that this process would come back supporting the Labour government's policy. So it sounds a bit odd because it hasn't even started yet. So we'll have to see what happens.
Well, they haven't started selecting the people to ask, right? No, so once they've done that, first they ask them, are you in favour of digital ID? Right, you're in.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's how it's done. I mean, it's just a very cynical view, but I'm afraid people are cynical about the way that government is run because, we see how they kind of, gently manipulate the truth. I mean, we just watched Kier Starmer, Dan Hodges written a piece today, 6 times yesterday, asked about whether he actually spoke personally to Peter Mandelson, either in person or on the phone or by some other means, because he did say that he was misled and he lied to by him. Yeah. And he didn't even attempt to answer the question. He just moved it on to, well, you don't want to talk about the war. You go, sorry? Answer the bloody question.
It's also just, knowing how government works and how processes work. There's no way on earth that the Prime Minister, if they're trying to force an appointment through their ambassador in the US, that they haven't spoken to the appointee. Of course he has. Of course he's spoken to him. And it's going to turn out that he's not only spoken to him, but he's probably promised him the job ages ago, lined it all up, tried to push it through the system. And that's what's going to come out in the future dumps of the Mandelson files, which are now a little bit on ice until we get a bit further with the process. But the point I was trying to make in the chamber yesterday was a very simple one, which is basically, where is the government's mandate for everything that it's doing? The agenda that Starmer's trying to push through, the reality of what's actually changing in Britain, none of that was in the Labour manifesto. Right. So they won a general election. Okay, they've got a very big majority in the House of Commons, but they won an historically low proportion of the popular vote. And because of the way the system works...
Yeah, they got fewer votes than Corbyn did in 2017, right?
Correct. And I mean, not unusually they got fewer votes than the other choices, if you like. So we have an odd system in some ways where you can win a big majority in the House of Commons, but actually most people voted against you when it comes down to it.
Which is mad.
Well, it's
a bit like the Lib Dems getting 72 MPs and nobody knows how.
It's meant that Labour has got this chokehold on the agenda in Parliament. But what are they doing with it? They're doing so many things that they never said they would do. They've done the Chagos Islands deal, or tried to, which I've been campaigning against really hard with lots of other people who are very annoyed about the cost to British taxpayers and think that it's wrong that British overseas territory should be ceded to Mauritius. There was no mention of that in the manifesto. No. They've done. They've tacitly pushed assisted suicide and late-term abortion up to birth. There were votes on that in the House of Lords last night. None of that was in the manifesto. Big social change. Whatever you think of that, one way or another, you can't deny that that's anything other than a big change the way the UK works. Tax hikes. Their manifesto said that they wouldn't raise tax on working people at all. They've consistently raised new taxes since they came into office. There's so many examples of the things that Starmer seems to care about and spends his time on. None of it was in his programme. No. None of it was in his programme. So nobody had the choice to back any of this.
The only thing I can remember that was in his programme was that he was going to talk about how they were going to have more transparent government. They were going to get rid of all the sleaze of the Tories' 14 years. They were going to make sure that ministers were accountable for what they did. And that all fell apart literally within about 2 weeks of them being in charge, when the Lord Alley stuff all came out. And you kind of went, hang on a minute, I don't mind really that you people are corrupt, because I expect you to be, but don't tell me you're not immediately before it all comes out.
Yeah, and Starmer wound that up to the nth degree. And not only did he do standard political campaigning, which you would expect from somebody who wants to be Prime Minister, he set himself up as the moral arbiter of the entire political arena, and he preached as if he were, he had the divine right to rule over every other participant in politics. And of course, he's not fit to be anybody's judge, as we found out very, very quickly. I think Labour are suffering from that.
In fact, he turns out to probably be actually worse than I think any Tory Prime Minister, all the way back to David Cameron and even George Osborne, who wasn't exactly, whiter than white. But, Boris Johnson was criticised for far less than this guy's done.
And I worked, in a couple of Tory administrations, including Liz Truss's, and, there were a lot of big mistakes there, and a lot of bad things went on. But I've never seen anything like Lord Mandelson being pushed through the system when the Prime Minister is aware that this guy is essentially knocking around with and best mates with a convicted paedophile. It's just that, even in the worst excesses of Tory sleaze.
But even going back to the Gordon Brown administration, there was Mandelson sitting as the business secretary, apparently, and I don't know what the exact kind of machinations were about the delivery of the items, but, buying illegal drugs through Jeffrey Epstein, allegedly, Botox being delivered possibly to Downing Street, Xanax, which you can't get unless it's on prescription, and Gordon Brown, the man with what was he known as the son of the manse, the so-called sort of, moral high ground character. And you just kind of go, sorry, I don't believe that you can be running an administration without knowing that that's going on in a very close-knit. You've worked inside Downing Street. It's a very close-knit place, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much so. I think the Conservatives made a lot of errors, and there was some incompetence there. But Labour are unmatched in their degree of hypocrisy. And I think, you know, it's not a good card or strategy to play, I think, with most people in Britain. I think they see right through that from Starmer.
Yeah.
And, you know, he banged on and on and on endlessly about the fact that he was going to change politics, he was going to clean up politics, he was going to usher in some era where politics would suddenly be, you know, squeaky clean. And of course, it was total rubbish.
Yeah.
And you know, one of the things that I tried to point out during that election campaign, and I'm afraid it's a bit of a mistake from our background as journalists, not us personally, I think, but you know, the wider political journalist class. Starmer sailed through the election campaign in 2024 with minimal scrutiny.
Yes.
Minimal scrutiny. And you know, barely a handful of serious journalistic pieces or interrogation was completed on what his plan for power actually was. Because everybody who was inside at that top level of the media looked at Starmer and they thought it looks exactly like me. And they thought that he had an equity with, you know, all of the things like propriety, ethics, competence. Because he'd run the CPS, he was going to be a competent public administrator. They just assumed that. He's been a totally incompetent
He's
Prime
been
Minister.
completely useless. I mean, I've said this since the beginning, that, you know, I was expecting not to be very welcoming to some of his policies. I didn't expect him to do anything that I would have enjoyed. However, I thought he'd be good at it.
Yeah.
Because he, as you say,
so did I.
would have had some kind of track record. But in a way, I mean, I've said this a lot about the media, and particularly the Westminster media. They're very uncurious about things. They don't really ask, with a few exceptions like Tim Shipman and people like that. Very few exceptions. They don't. They sort of move on. I mean, how many times have you seen Starmer sitting in a TV studio and he talks about, you know, we've reduced the, you know, the NHS waiting lists. Yeah. And they haven't. And it's very clear that they're doing what I said they were doing 2 years ago, which is they're basically removing people off the list and pretending that they're not there. Yeah. And it's a complete con. But none of them ever question him on it. None of them. They all just, you know, ask the next question.
I thought it was remarkable how little serious scrutiny there was of Labour before they took office. I think, you know, it was historically unusual because it usually, you know, in general election campaign in Britain, by normal standards, you get pretty good going over whatever party you are, and you have to come out and defend.
Well, Reform certainly will.
Absolutely,
You know?
they will. Absolutely, they will. And just, you know, wait and see the double standard that's going to be applied to parties on the right when it comes to the next general election, to the treatment that Starmer was given. But I think he was handed the keys to Downing Street in the easiest possible manner. I mean, he was only elected in 2015, and he spent his initial time in Parliament. He was in the shadow cabinet pretty quickly under Corbyn, and he was basically the chief Remain architect of the shadow cabinet. So he spent his entire time undermining Corbyn on Brexit. That's how he made his way. So he's actually, you know, he's been in Parliament barely 5 minutes. He had a very easy ride in the election. He feels like he won big because of the size of his majority, but it doesn't seem to have clicked that that majority
and he uses
came.
that as an excuse, doesn't he, for not leaving, because he keeps saying, I was elected to change Britain.
Sure.
Well, no, you weren't. You were elected to change the Tory government. That was it.
Well, my point is, he certainly wasn't elected to change Britain on this programme,
right?
And that he, you know, if he really thinks he was elected to change Britain on even on a very thin popular mandate, it certainly isn't on this programme, because he's making up his programme as he goes along, and it's a very undemocratic government. I mean, there's very little, you know, practical opposition to this government outside of the media and social media. You know, opposition parties are trying in Parliament, but because of the Commons majority, you know, the reality is that it's going to be unlikely that Labour lose a single vote in the House of Commons in the entire Parliament. Because, okay, they will have initial problems like rebellions on welfare reform and so on. So the only people who can really defeat Labour's agenda is, as you said, themselves. And it's not great. It's not great for politics when that happens, because Starmer has a pretty unbridled grip on power. And, you know, my take, I think he has zero incentive to go for an early election. He personally, he has zero incentive.
Well, he knows he just lose everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, he thinks he can go on getting more and more and more unpopular. He's already the most unpopular modern post-war British Prime Minister. I think that's going to get worse and worse. And I think it's going to get to the point where, frankly, Starmer can't visit a single town or city in the UK anywhere, and he just won't be able to leave. He won't be able to leave the bunker.
He got booed at Westminster Abbey last week, didn't he? I mean, that was appalling.
He's so unpopular now. I don't think he will be able to leave the bunker, and that's not a good thing for any political leader, because he's going to get, you know, more and more and more out of touch.
Exactly right. Final question for you. Chagos Islands. We spoke last. Was it last week? You had the Pope party. Seems like a lot longer ago than that. Anyway, it was a great party, by the way. Thank you. Is that done and dusted, do you think, or is there still more work to do?
It's never done and dusted, this one. It's very important to be vigilant on what's happening with Chagos. The situation at the moment is the government had this bill in Parliament to basically enact the Chagos deal, the bad deal with Mauritius, and it stopped bringing that bill back for now. The next week is the last week of the parliamentary term before the Easter holidays, where everyone goes away for the best part of a month. So I think it probably won't come back before Easter. There's a little window between Easter and the summer where they might try and bring it back. But what's stopping them is President Trump has made it very clear that he doesn't support the deal. I mean, he has nuked the deal.
Yeah, hates Starmer, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's fighting a war in Iran for which he needs the Diego Garcia military base on Chagos. So I think it's becoming more difficult for the government to bring it back. Having said that, with Labour, you've got to be really careful because if there's the slightest change or hint of a change in anyone's position, they'll be straight back in Parliament trying to do it. So I'm just hoping we can get to the end of the parliamentary session in May or June, because at that point the bill is going to fall and the bill will be kind of deleted. And if they want to bring it back, they'll have to sort of start all over again from square one.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Ross, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Ross Kempsell, Lord Ross Kempsell, we should say. The Chagos Islands. By the way, Pooch, are we going there? Should we not go there and do a show? A couple of shows, maybe. They'll try and stop it, no doubt. A bit like there's what Radio Caroline feel about all this, isn't there? You get on a boat somehow, just a little circle around the Chagos Islands, just do shows from there. Coming up, we've got more for you. We're going to be talking to a whole bunch of different. Layla Cunningham is actually going to be here very shortly, has to be said. She's going to be talking to us about what's going on in the office of Sadiq Khan. She's obviously the Reform mayoral candidate, of course. Also coming up, Austin Williams is here. Ellie Hodges is here. She's going to bring us a bit of optimism for a change, because we don't have much of that around here. I mean, we do personally, but the economy, the government. The outlook of people is not generally optimistic, but she's going to try and bring us a bit of a shaft of light, shall we say. But it's all going to come up. What should we do, Pooch? Should we do the news? Okay, and let's have some news with Howard Hughes. Not Howard Hughes, Edward Hughes.
Good morning, I'm Edward Hughes with your news. The major story dominating UK headlines is a rapidly spreading meningitis outbreak in Kent. Now declared a national incident with around 20 cases confirmed, including 2 tragic deaths. One a University of Kent student and 1 schoolgirl. Health authorities have issued an urgent alert for doctors across England to watch for symptoms, while thousands of students and others queue for vaccinations and antibiotics amid growing concern over its link to a local nightclub. Politically, newspaper front pages scrutinise Labour's migrant plans, while tensions simmer within the party. Chilbs. Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar reveals he hasn't spoken to PM Kier Starmer since calling for his resignation earlier this year. On the international front affecting the UK, oil and gas prices remain elevated due to the ongoing Middle East conflict involving Iran, raising fears of higher energy bills. That's your news roundup. Please remember to like and subscribe. Latest Tigers.
Thank you very much indeed, Edward Hughes there with the news. Lots of you are getting in touch to ask about the live show, which is on May the 6th. You can get your tickets from Ticketmaster, by the way, and it's going to be a great night, so you might want to be there, and if you haven't made plans, make them now. It's a Wednesday evening. It's the night before the election, actually, the local elections up and down the country. There's a little thing there. Lewis MacLeod will be there, who's the great impressionist, the brother of Donald MacLeod. Also, we'll have the Right Said Fred are going to be along. And also, Carol Decker has now just signed up for it as well. And she's just corrected me, by the way, Pooch. Apparently, I said China in my... She said China in your hand.
Your hand, yeah.
I thought that's what I said. Anyway, but she's listening, so that's all good. I'm happy to say that we are now about to re-enter the world of philosophy. Because you can't always be sure what Austin Williams is going to say, but you can be sure that it's going to be sensible. Austin, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. Let's talk about this particular clip. There's a guy called Andrew Boff, who's, I think, a member of the Tory party in the London Assembly, and he was asking about the homeless. Because one of the things that we see all the time is Kier Starmer and Sadiq Khan have a real problem answering questions. Ask them a question and they answer a different question, or they don't answer the one that you've asked them. This is Andrew Boff, apparently trying to find out what the sort of policy is in London Assembly and in Sadiq Khan's office for reducing homelessness in London, in the capital city. Have a look at this.
Let's go on to the London Ending Homelessness Accelerator. The government has committed £3.5 million to this. Honestly, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. For me, it's a lot of money. But, I mean, it doesn't sound a lot of money, bearing in mind the scale of the problem that is trying to fix. So how much is the Mayor committing, and what is that going to be used for?
It's being used for a variety of things, including kind of resourcing the team around that work, but also funding some of the big bits of research work that are kind of fundamental to...
Will rough sleeping in London next year be less than it is this year?
I absolutely hope that it will be.
Hope. Horrible word, hope.
Yeah.
It's an excuse for not doing anything. I mean, that's the aim, isn't it? If we're going to meet that 2030 target, in which year will we see a decline in the numbers?
We will continue to do absolutely everything that we can to bring down the numbers of rough sleeping in London to meet that target.
But you've got no particular profile of how that will come down, when it will come down, just 2030?
At present, yeah, we don't have a profile, but the target remains.
That is, of course, a guy called Andrew Boff, who's, I'm not sure if he's still a Tory, but he certainly was a Tory in the London Assembly, asking about the policy, literally, on homelessness. I mean, I walk around London a fair bit, and you see now probably more homeless people, I think, than you would have ever seen. Austin, I don't know about you, but is homelessness now a bigger problem than it's ever been, or is it just our imagination?
Well, I mean, homelessness has always been with us, as they say, the poor. But effectively, look, there's a house building problem, isn't there? Right. So whether it's the fact that people can't find apartments, there's been a kind of a coincidence of many things that have occurred. One is COVID, which kind of, when we were locked down, we kind of suddenly lost our appetite for high-rise apartments. Being locked away on the 40th floor with no gardens, suddenly the appeal disappeared and people moved out.
Didn't they put loads of people from the streets, though, homeless people, into buildings, though?
During
that period.
No, there are lots of empty houses within London, but I don't want to kind of see that as the solution that the government is proposing. So instead of building more houses, it's very easy to say, you've got a spare bedroom, haven't you, Mike? Why don't you put somebody in there? So that idea, it's a bit like saying, we've got motorways, instead of building more roads, let's open up the hard shoulder and call that a lane, and then we don't have to buy anymore.
And then call it a smart motorway, which is the very opposite of what it actually is.
It's a dumb motorway.
Bloody stupid motorway.
Yeah, and more accidents are caused by it. No, so it's that idea of eking out more kind of resources from the existing supply that we have. So the answer obviously should be, and is normally been presented, is we should build more houses. That's been a standard policy probably for 75 years. I mean, I was reading about the Tory party in 1951 where they said we should build 300 million houses. That's 300,000 houses every year. That's what the Labour Party said last year. We've never reached it. We've always done half of that, whereas in the 1960s, we kind of got some way towards it because we were actually experimenting with new techniques. But that idea about now proposing that we build more houses, it's just like a stuck record that we just don't do anything about it. So it's a conversation which is now politically astute that we say it, but what's the point of actually kind of finalising it?
But do you know what's interesting is that whenever we talk about the fact that not enough houses are being built, and Sadiq Khan, we know for sure, has not reached not one of his targets, I think, and he's not even built a tenth of the houses he was meant to build. Everywhere I go, there's the housing estate going up. So it's not like there's no houses being built, particularly in the home counties. I go down to Sussex every weekend, and if you drive down the A21 and the environs of say, from say Sevenoaks down to Tunbridge Wells, down to Hastings, there's huge numbers of houses being built. And much to my chagrin, actually, because I always say, well, where's the infrastructure? What's going to happen to all the people that live there? Is it not that surprising that there's traffic jams all over the place, that there's not enough schools, that there's not enough hospitals, there's not enough space for people to park? All of that.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, look, there are houses being built. I mean, to reach 150,000 a year, which even is half the target, is still a lot of houses. And there's a new development which is happening outside Poundbury in Dorset. Prince Charles, or King Charles now, is actually building a lot of houses. We've got this new idea for Forest City 1, which is a new proposal to build outside Cambridge a new city, which is quite an ambitious project, I think. But, there are still lots of
How long will that take, though? Probably 15 years or something?
Well, you can't rush these things.
We don't do things very quickly, do we?
No, but then again, obviously China does it very quickly, but then it does it on a target basis, and the houses are crap. So we have to be a bit careful. The same thing happened in the 1960s, by the way. When we hit our housing targets in the 60s, remember Ronan Point? That was the consequence of it. So we built kind of lots of houses, but in fact the quality was very poor. So I think actually having a conscious decision as to we're going to hit certain targets, that we're actually going to try to build them in the right place, and with quality is a good start. But you're right, exactly, that what you find now is that any developer worth their salt, in order to make a bit of profit, is going to say, I'm only going to build where there is an existing sewer or an existing reservoir, or whatever it is, because otherwise that kind of infrastructural expenditure is going to eat away at their profits. So the Forest City 1 project, which I'm kind of quite interested in, is suggesting they're going to build reservoirs and hospitals and schools and and dentists.
Thought through community idea.
And forests.
Well, that would be nice. But I mean, of course, the other thing we hear all the time is that an awful lot of the new builds are going to be given over to migrants, people who have come here either illegally or legally, but who are now settling in Britain and have been given, the right to remain or whatever it is, and they're going to be some kind of statutory guarantee that as much as 40% of some new housing estates is going to be for them.
Yeah, well, that's the absurdity of the situation.
Well, people are not going to like that, are they?
Not a lot. I think that ultimately, you do have this kind of... Obviously, look, immigrants are not necessarily responsible for the housing shortage. That's a fundamental problem of the inability to build stuff. However,
but
they're exacerbating the problem.
Yeah, their existence doesn't help,
No, because if you're building 150,000 houses and you're getting 150,000 more people coming to the country on top of the existing waiting list, then obviously there's a mathematical dilemma you have there. Yes, but so I think that actually what we should be trying to do is to recognise the nature of releasing land, of having the ambition to suggest that maybe environmental criteria should be downplayed a little bit more, and maybe humanity should be seen as the driver for the housing that we require. And there's a little bit of a conversation going on about that, but ultimately, with Ed Miliband, or Ed Millivolt, as he's known for his energy generation capacity, all this kind of stuff about prioritising.
I prefer.
It's kind of prioritising nature at the expense of humanity rather than the other way around, which is furthering the cause of humanity by using nature and having dominion over nature.
And I understand when you say that we need to build more houses because we've got more people and all of that, but surely there comes a point of no return where you kind of go, enough already, we can't build any more houses. We've got already, I think, the most densely populated country in Western Europe. Every other country in Europe, has, we're told all the time, they take more migrants than we do. But France is a much bigger country and it's got a lot more land. So has Germany, so has Spain. They've got vast swathes of the country where there's nothing going on. We really don't have much of that. I mean, and our country is becoming more and more full up, if you like. And I don't know what the answer. Well, I know what the answer is. The answer is to at some point go, enough. We're not going to let any more people in.
I think the perception is that we're filling up. I mean, the statistics, take them or leave them, is that 80% of the country is urban, roads and buildings and towns or whatever, right?
80%.
8%.
8%.
Right. That leaves 92%.
Well, it does, but then you can probably most of that is in Scotland, where you go north of the central belt and there's nothing there.
Yeah, lots of it you can't build on. I agree. It's a mountain or whatever it might be, right? So take it with a pinch of salt. Obviously, a lot of it is owned by English heritage, a lot of it's owned by the Crown, a lot of it's owned by university sector, a lot of it's owned by Sustrans, the cycling network. All these people have large tranches of land that they're just sitting on because they have their own particular fetish for it. So some of it will not be available. And as you say, there's no point building in, north of Aberdeen, no offence. But, if you don't have that connectivity...
There's no work going on there. But, I mean, my American friends used to come over...
It should be if you had oil fields.
They used to come over from America and come to the UK and come to places like Wiltshire, where I used to live, and they'd go, what's going on with Britain? You drive through these country roads and there's field after field after field. There's a few crop circles over there, and then you get to this tiny little village where there's these tiny little houses right next to each other, for about a couple of 100 yards, and then you're back to all the fields again. And I get that that we don't want to turn ourselves into a kind of massive conurbation like the east coast of America, where you can drive from, say, Washington, D.C. all the way up to Boston, and you don't really see a field. You maybe don't want that, but there must be some happy medium, mustn't there?
Well, there ought to be, but that's called structured master planning, which doesn't actually happen in this country. As it happens, I was reading recently about China. I mean, China's got this urban expansion, as we all know about, building cities after cities. They haven't built that many cities as it happens, but that's the rhetoric. But also, when you look at Shanghai has got the biggest public transport network in the world by far. Add all the world together, you still don't match their subway system, right? But you could say...
I bet there's no strikes.
They do actually. They have more protests, more trade union disputes in China. Yeah.
Because we're getting one. I meant to tell you this, please.
Obviously,
we're getting
they get put in
week.
jail. You know what I mean? But, yeah, that's been called off, isn't it? Next week's strike. Yeah,
they always get called off.
Yeah,
just give them more money.
Well, I think that's the way
it seems to go. We're going on strike to have another 100 grand. Okay, then.
That's the answer. No, but in China, what I'm trying to say is that if you had a much more conscious planning system where you said, stop the sprawl of Shanghai, then the subway system wouldn't have to be that big. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's almost like the infrastructure having to catch up with the lack of planning that goes in, as a forethought. So I think there's two things. One is the romance of Britain, which is the kind of the Dad's Army, Private Godfrey, Rose Garden type thatched cottage, which is obviously very pleasant. So we don't want to ruin that.
Right.
But at the same time, we haven't built a city since Milton Keynes.
Right.
Which you may think is a good thing.
I think that is a good thing, because I've been to Milton Keynes and I don't really want any more of them, to be honest. It's a horrendous place. But there we are. Austin, great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Austin Williams. Where can we find your thoughts and
Future Cities Project.
Whatever?
Future Cities Project. And by the way, on the 20th of April, I'm doing a Barney discussion with Kathleen Stock on her new book on assisted dying.
Oh, cool.
Critical Against Assisted Dying. So that's available.
Very
We'll do
interesting.
that online.
All right,
Thanks.
Austin, great. Thanks very much indeed.
Cheers,
Coming up, we're going to be talking to Ellie Hodges about optimism and why we shouldn't be quite so miserable about everything that's going wrong. It's a tough one, that. I tell you what, she can convince me not to be miserable about what's going on, and she'll be doing a great job. Also, Layla Cunningham is going to be here. Coming up, though, you're not going to believe this. Nigel Farage is doing what I'm doing, right? Yeah. He's going to get his hair cut in public.
Hello. You're Amy, are you? Amy, hello there. Very nice to meet you. Thing is, I've had the same hairstyle for 50 years.
Okay.
So maybe it's time to change.
Yeah? Shall I show you some options?
Give me some options.
Okay, so there's this one.
Oh my good lord.
Yeah?
I'd look younger, wouldn't I? Oh no. No. I'd have to have some implants for that. No, that's the Green Party. That is the Green Party. Well, this is the best of the options. I could live with that. That I could not live with. And that would mean I'm voting Green, which isn't going to happen. Well, there we are. That's going to be it. Being done now. Be properly seen tomorrow at Prime Minister's Questions. There you go. Off you go, Amy. Oh, no.
So, for those of you who don't know, I'm getting my hair cut. I've been forced into it a week tomorrow, actually, I think it is. The guy called Dan is coming down from Oldham. He's a hairdresser. He's going to cut it for me. We're going to do it on Plonk of the Week, I think. That's the idea, anyway. And the trouble is, it's like whenever you want to get your hair cut, you kind of go, I quite like it, actually. Because I do. It's a bit longer than it should be, but I don't really want to get it cut. Ellie, you can have a view. Do you think I should get it cut?
Maybe just a little bit.
A little bit? A bit of a trim, perhaps? Yeah.
Don't get like a skinhead or anything.
No. Well, do you know, the funny thing is I said this before I started doing this show, because when I worked at Talk, we had these amazing makeup artists who used to come in, who were there every day, basically. And so one of them, a woman called Magda, would just sort of cut it on a regular basis.
Really?
She would just go,
okay.
I think you need a bit of a trim. So I never really had a haircut as such for about 4 years. And then finally, I thought, crikey, I better go. So I found this guy. I went to hairdressers in Maryland, and this guy gave me this really weird haircut. It was kind of a buzz cut on the top. And he said, how did you do it? I said, well, to be honest, I don't remember how I do it because I haven't had it for such a long time. So anyway, we'll see what Dan does. But he's the partner of a woman called Rachel, who we had on the show right in the first couple of weeks, I think, talking about how terribly badly treated her mother was by the NHS. And so she's saying, if you don't behave yourself, I'm going to tell you to make it look really bad. So we shall see. Anyway, a quick update on the poll that we've got going on today. What is Britain's main source of defence? Is it HMS Dragon? Is it air-fixed drone kits? Is it Starmer's laser focus, or is it potholes on the beach? Potholes on the beach seems to be winning, 56%. But of course, the people coming onto the beach aren't driving anywhere. They're just walking. So, you know, it's absolutely hopeless. Anyway, listen, Ellie Hodges is here, and she has written a piece about optimism, which I think is really interesting, because we were both at an event last Friday, and people were sort of asked to get up and speak about stuff, and you have always been a good voice for young people about what it's like at university, what it's like at sort of these, you know, places of education, and how there's an awful lot of misinformation being handed out, and the wokeists have kind of taken over. But you also said, which I thought was interesting, and you've kind of written a piece about this, that, you know, we shouldn't be too pessimistic. We shouldn't just throw our hands up and go, it's all gone to cock and it's awful, it's dreadful, you know. So tell us about that. Tell us about the new optimism.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a new movement.
Yeah, maybe it is. So I actually decided to write this article after the event that we were at, because I just thought that, you know, no one's really talking about the good things. No one is being optimistic. And just to clarify, before everyone starts saying it's, you know, naive, being optimistic is not being naive.
No.
You can acknowledge that we have problems, but think about what is the solution, how are we going to fix that, instead of just being, you know, putting on Twitter all of the negative things that are happening. And because you can get really, really down. You know, I've seen it happen to people, it's happened to myself, where every time you open X, everything you see is negative. And that's because the algorithm will feed you things that make you angry, that make you have a reaction. It's not going to feed you optimistic things if that's not something you'll react to.
Yes.
So you can get in a state where you feel like X is a reflection of the whole entire country, which it isn't. So anyway, so I just decided to kind of do a little kind of speech about that at the event. And afterwards, I had quite a few people come up to me and just say, well, no one's actually saying that. And that's when I thought, actually, okay, I'm going to write an article about this, because I do think there is a real lack of optimism. And I can't blame a lot of people when everything they see is so negative all the time. But we need to think about what's good about this country. What is there actually to fight for? And my advice to people would be, get off of X for a little bit, go outside, go leafleting, go fight for something that you believe in, go to an event. That's what I try and do. I go to as many events as possible where there's like-minded people, and you can see so many people that are actually fighting for what you believe in and fighting for the good of the country, and that gives you a sense of optimism.
Also, I think the other thing about it is that, and I'm very much an optimist as well, I mean, I see, you know, good things in opportunities. You know, people say, there was a saying, I think, you know, some people, you know, look at a situation and only see, you know, negative things. Other people look at it and see an opportunity to do something and make it into something, you know. And I think part of the problem is that people, because the government's so bloody awful, and there's nothing wrong with criticising the government, by the way.
No, of
it doesn't mean that the country's awful, you know. So separate those things, you know. Don't just go, everything's terrible because Starmer's an absolute tosspot. I don't know if I can say that. But, you know, he is, and the government's awful, and they're running the country into the ground, but still the country is great. Great Britain is a great country. Yeah. There's a lot to be boasting about.
Exactly.
I mean, I saw you, I think, did you tweet the other day about just being in London and saying what a great city it is? And you know, I mean, I've been guilty of it in the past as well, telling people, you know, London's not the same as it used to be, it's more dangerous than it was, you might get your phone stolen, or, you know, and all of those things are true. But it doesn't mean that London's a bad place.
I just think the issue I have is when people say that we're in a state of irreversible decline. I don't like that kind of language, because I do think that a lot of the problems we have can be fixed. Exactly. So when I wrote this article afterwards, actually, I messaged some of my friends that live in Australia that have visited here recently and just said, what did you think when you came to London? Didn't tell them what it would be for. And they just said, I absolutely loved it. It was amazing. I'd heard some negative things, but when I actually got here, I loved it. I don't agree when people say that Britain has no culture. Very clearly it does. Even just simple things. Like one of them went on and on about how much they love being on a double-decker bus. Right. These simple things that we forget are so iconic to places like London. And the only negative that someone had was they felt there's a lot of shops on the high streets in London that don't really feel like they belong there. So, you know, these vape shops, American candy shops, which I completely agree with, but that can be fixed.
Yeah, you can change that. And also that's a very small part of it. I mean, I lived in New York in the 80s for about nearly 10 years, and they had the same kind of problem. But if you were a New Yorker, you were kind of like, if people come to New York and they don't like it, well, don't come back. You know, they would have this kind of attitude that, you know, we're New York, nobody likes us, we don't care.
Exactly.
You know, and I remember there was I think there was a baseball World Series where the Mets were doing particularly well as a New York team, and I think it was effectively like the semi-final of the tournament, and Pittsburgh were playing. I think it was Pittsburgh Pirates, and the mayor of Pittsburgh had come out and said something derogatory about New York, you know, and Ed Koch, who was the mayor at the time, was asked about it, and he went, "Where's Pittsburgh?" Because Pittsburgh's nothing, you know. New York is New York, and he was like, literally, I don't care what anybody from Pittsburgh thinks.
A part of being patriotic is actually sometimes lifting this country up and saying what's so good about it, and that's what I think that we are missing. So in 2025. London was the 3rd most visited city in the world. People still want to come here, and I think people forget that. People forget that people still look to London and think, wow, you know, it's the #1 financial hub, for example. There's so many great things about London. Me saying this isn't saying that everything's perfect, because we know that it's not.
No, because it isn't, no. And that would also be stupid. I mean, if you went the other way and kind of went,
exactly.
London's great, you know, come and see, you know, you'd still say to any friend of yours that came here, you know, don't get your phone out on the street. But you might say that to them in Paris. You might say that to them in Madrid. I don't know.
That's interesting about Paris, because one of my friends that came here from Australia actually said, I felt that Paris was more like how people were describing London, which is interesting.
Oh, really?
I felt it was a bit more like dirty, and it wasn't as nice, and there was only like a very small area of it that was nice, but they felt London was just amazing. It's just like even simple things like seeing the King's Guards, for example. That kind of thing that we forget because, you know, we live here and we're here all the time. But I'm sometimes, when I'm walking around London, you're walking past Parliament, you're walking past all of this amazing architecture, and just think, well, I'm so lucky that I live somewhere that is so great. And there is negative things about it. And that's why, you know, channels like this it's so important that they do call it out. But we also need to look at the positive side of things.
Yeah, I think so. So where's the article to be found if you want to read it?
The article is on my Substack, so just Ellie Hodges, and my ex, Ellie Hodges 62.
Okay. Substack's an amazing thing, isn't it? I still don't really understand it. We've got a Substack, and I write stuff that goes on there, and we've got people sending pictures in. In fact, should we do a bit of a Heron of the Day scenario? Because we forgot to do it yesterday. And quite often what happens is we forget to do things, and then we get to 9:30 and go, oh, the show's over, we've forgotten. So people have sent these pictures into my Facebook sometimes. Here we go, Heron of the Day. So there we go. One from Hugh Andre, who is, of course, our good friend at We Served. I think that was taken in southwest London. The one on the left is from Holland Park, which is a very nice part of London as well. It's over in Kensington, Heron of the Day. And then the one on the right is Birmingham. There's so many of these herons around. I mean, I don't know if I've told you the story of the heron, have I?
I think so,
The reason that we've got all these herons in the studio is because we kind of picked it up as somebody said it's like the set of Jumanji. But it's a bit, because we kind of, I had this visitation from a heron when I was, you know, I came out of the house one day and it was in the midst of me leaving talk and not being really sure what to do.
Yeah.
And it turns out that herons are these incredible creatures which are a sign for an awful lot of different cultures around the world, including the Native American one, of sort of new beginnings and encouraging.
I remember you
so it's
saying
quite
this.
optimistic,
Yeah,
actually,
that's
as
nice.
a general. So you should adopt the heron, maybe.
Yeah, I
as
should.
An optimistic bird,
I absolutely
you know,
should. Yeah.
Because, you know, people believe it's almost like a good luck charm if you walk out and see one.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, it came back once after about 2 weeks, and I've never seen it since.
Wow.
So it's never been there again. So it seems to me even more kind of prescient that it was there at that particular time.
Definitely,
You know?
definitely. I think that's a sign of good luck.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we've got a nice picture of Ziggy to show you as well. This is Ziggy. He's out and about today. He's got such a great face, hasn't he? He's out walking this morning with his mum and having a very nice time. So I'll be seeing him tomorrow, actually.
It is
It's a
cold
nice
in there.
Friday.
It's actually quite warm today. It looks really cold.
Yeah, it's freezing today. I don't know what happened to this, because I'm saying yesterday I was sitting in the sunshine in the afternoon down in Borough Market, literally wondering if I should have put some sun cream on. It was that hot.
Is the sun shining today? But it's not as warm.
No.
But yeah, London when it's sunny is amazing.
That's another thing.
Bring it back
and
to
I think,
the optimism.
we used to say that about Glasgow. When I lived in Glasgow, because the weather was so awful most of the time. Whenever the sun came out, it was like, oh my God, it's amazing, it's fantastic.
The only memory I have of Glasgow is it just being so cold. That's it.
Yeah, and wet and horrible.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Ellie, great to see you. Thank you very much
Lovely
for popping in.
seeing you.
We'll see you again very soon, because we've now got to speak to Lady Cunningham, who is a great person to actually speak to after you and your optimism, because she, of course, is the mayoral candidate, or is about to be announced as the mayoral candidate for London. She's a London councillor. Layla, very good morning to you.
Hiya, how are you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm very well. Good to see you. Welcome to the Mike Graham Show.
Thank you.
We've just been talking about optimism, and Ellie's written a piece about it because I think she's right. You know, it's not. There's nothing wrong with pointing out that things are not as good as they should be, but it's also nothing wrong really in saying that we can still fix them. I mean, you must be, as part of reform, sure of the fact that you can fix things, because they do need fixing. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, of course we need optimism, you know, of course, and we need, and I say that when I talk about being mayor of London, I want to show a vision of London, an optimistic vision of London. You know, I want to see it thriving. I want to see independent shops. I want to see businesses opening up. I want to see my kids, people's kids being able to afford a home, safe streets. That is optimism. But optimism doesn't mean ignoring what's wrong.
No, of course.
When you go to a doctor and they tell you, you know, you're gravely ill, but there's a cure, you know, you are declaring that something's wrong, and you're optimistic that they can be saved. It's the same with London.
Yes, and it can be. And what would you say if you were asked, and I'm sure you will be many times between now and the next election, what is wrong with London right now?
So I think there's a lot of things wrong with London. I think there has been a lack of priority on public safety. In fact, I feel it's been deprioritized. You don't see police on the streets. In a city of 9 million, we only have 2 24-hour counters open. Police stations have been shut. Visible policing has been cut. Stop and search have been so politicized that I speak to police officers and they cannot arrest someone who just smells of marijuana.
Yeah.
You know, face coverings are used regularly by criminals to commit crime, and as a senior prosecutor in London, I know it's extremely difficult to convict beyond reasonable doubt when their face is covered. So I think without law and order, for me, everything else breaks down, because there's a freedom to being safe. There's a freedom to whipping your phone out whenever you want. There's a freedom to letting your kids go out and not trace them all the time. You know, there's a freedom to opening up a shop and not worrying that you're going to be shoplifted. And those freedoms for me don't exist anymore. You know, we do have a rape is reported every hour. Only 6% end up in a charge. And so that is a problem with London. And I do think also there is a problem with the civic culture of London. You know, I think we've shied away from declaring ourselves proudly to be the capital of the United Kingdom. And I think there has to be a strong civic British culture.
Oh, have we just lost Layla?
No. I don't feel it's a British city anymore.
Yeah.
And that for me has to come back. It has to be glorious. It has to be British. It has to be, you know, represent everything that's incredible about our country.
I was born and raised in London and lived here most of my life, with a few exceptions. I was in New York for 10 years. I lived in Bath when I went to university. I lived in Scotland for a while.
Lived in America.
Yeah, and you know, the thing that I say to people about when I went to New York in the 1980s, 1983, 84, all of the migrants and the immigrants who were there, and it was a massive melting pot, you know, the people from the Dominican Republic, people from Central America, people from Russia, all over the world. But they all wanted to be American. They all wanted to be from New York, right? And you don't
they all
get that
adapted
sense.
the American accent.
Yeah.
They all adapted the American accent, you know, and they're like, and they were proud to be American.
Yes. Well, I tell a story about there's a guy who I still think works for the Times, a guy called Charles Bremner, and he'd been the Russian correspondent, and he spoke Russian, and you know, very clever man, and he got sent to America. He was a New York correspondent, and he and I were sharing a cab one day, and it was something called Skyline, which used to be this kind of, you know, limo service that you would hire. And the guy who was driving us was obviously, you could tell by the way he spoke that he was Russian, you know, and he spoke in broken English. And Charles Bremner thought that he'd be clever and go to this guy, you know, where are you from? So that they could probably practice his Russian, right? And the guy went, New Jersey. And that was it.
Yeah.
He wasn't from Russia anymore. He was from New Jersey.
Because the USA, if you come here, you become us.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. And I think that's what we have to say. You come to Britain, of course you're going to have your own culture and your own religion and your way of life, but you have to abide by the umbrella civic life and the British way of life. Because I think when you celebrate every religion, every culture equally, it creates division, it creates confusion, and it dilutes the national culture. You know, there is an operating system, I think, Mike, in every country.
Yeah.
Right. And the operating system in Britain is a British one. It's Christian, number one. It's, you know, it's everyone's equal under the law. It's tolerance, but not self-erasure. You know, there is a difference to me between tolerance and submission. And it's telling people, listen, you are welcome here on the basis that you contribute and you become British. And becoming British is not just a passport. Becoming British is a way of life. And you know what? It's what's in your heart. You know, I would do whatever it takes for this country. But you're right. Americans are different. Immigrants, when you talk to them, they are like, you know, I'm American. And even my kids, my husband's American. And when my kids watch an American football match or whatever, and the national anthem comes on, automatically they put their hand on their chest.
Yeah.
And for me, that's quite remarkable to have a look at, because I go speak to different schools here. And it's total opposite in schools. They hate our country. 16, 17-year-olds, oh my God, they're ashamed of our history. That's what they're being taught.
Yeah. And that's terrible. And look at what happened this week. We've been talking about it all week on the show. Sadiq Khan going to Trafalgar Square to boast about the fact that, you know, not only does he want an iftar to take place there, but he wants it to be the biggest iftar in the Western world. And you kind of go, sorry, that's not your job. Your job is to be the mayor of London. Your job is to promote London. Your job is to not segregate London. And what he did this week was to segregate London.
I agree. Listen, there is a slippery slope. You know, you've got across the world, you have different types of worshipping, right? For me, faith is deeply personal. And we are a Christian country, as we said. And I don't think we should have mass public display of Islamic prayers in one of our major civic squares, which is Trafalgar Square. It's wrong. And it's not just a celebration. This was a state-sponsored prayer where he took part in it. And listen, I don't see him taking part in mass state-sponsored Christian prayers.
No.
So in that sense, he is favouring one over the other. But you know, I do think it's wrong. And there is a form of, I guess you could call it Islamism, where obviously on one spectrum you have the terrorists, but on the other spectrum, you know, the softer one that I think we are seeing a lot more in this country is a massive show of force of the religion, where it stops becoming religion and it literally becomes a show of force. And it could be interpreted as a show of dominance.
Yeah.
You know, when you have hundreds of men praying in our square, that's not for religious purposes. That is for me, you know, we're here and we want to know we're here. And that is a softer version, because Islamism is when religion starts coming into civic life and public life and politics. And for me, that side of it is what we saw in the prayers.
Yeah.
There was absolutely no need for that.
No, and all it's done is rile people, and he will of course say, well, of course it's made the racists come out of the woodwork, and you know, if you criticise it, but I'm not a racist because I don't like the look of that. I'm a Londoner and I don't like the look of it.
Listen, I'm a Muslim. You don't see that in other countries. In some Muslims, you don't do that in Dubai.
No.
There are places of worship. That's why they exist. You know, you go and worship in the mosques. No one's got a problem with that. I remember Lee on TV, on GB News, he's always got the best sense of humour, Lee Anderson, and he said it rubs him the wrong way. And you know what? I get it. It rubs me the wrong way too.
Yeah.
It doesn't
seem. Yeah. I'm exactly the same. It just didn't seem right.
We need to be the capital of the United Kingdom. And listen, it is a Christian country. It is a Christian capital. If we're going to celebrate any religion in such a public mass demonstration, then it has to be the Christian one.
Right. Exactly right. And as many people pointed out, there weren't very many women there, it seemed, from what we could see anyway. If they were at the back, I don't know. I mean, you as a Muslim woman have got the sort of unique situation going on where you get criticised by pretty much everyone, whether from the left or the right. You know, you've got the kind of Restore Britain crowd who think you shouldn't be allowed to stand. And I think they probably don't think you should even be allowed to live here, frankly. And then you've got the left who think that, you know, you're betraying your own cause and, you know, you shouldn't be reformed.
Pulling the ladder up.
Yeah.
from behind.
So how do
But
you
then I get
cope?
the Muslims as well, by the way. The Muslims think I'm a fake Muslim. I'm pretending to be Muslim. I'm a kafir, and I you know, retribution is coming to me.
Right.
So
how do you cope with all that?
Well, because I listen, I know what I'm saying is right. You know, I know what I believe in my heart. For me, as I said, religion is a deeply personal thing. It should never, ever, you know, especially the Muslim religion, should never come into British politics. And people say, oh, you know, Layla, you know, how do you feel in your British Muslim community? I don't have a British Muslim community. I am British.
Yeah.
I don't befriend people on the basis of their religion or whatever.
Right.
And I think we need to go back to that. I feel, I know listen, people are going to say it's arrogant, but I feel what I'm saying is correct. I'm in the right party, and it's never about demonizing anyone. It's more about celebrating and protecting Great Britain and what makes us Great Britain, and our culture and our civic culture. And some people can flip it and say that's demonizing Muslims or that's demonizing immigrants. It is not.
Right.
It is a fierce protection and of our culture and what this country represents. My parents didn't come here for that. My parents came here for Great Britain.
Yeah.
You know, they moved to London because it's the capital of the United Kingdom, not because it's the capital of a Muslim country.
Right.
You know, I showed my mum actually the prayers. So my mum's in her 90s, and I said, "Mum, you know, look at what's going on here. Does this make you happy? Is this what you moved here for?" She was quite shocked. She was like, "No, not at all." She goes, "Is this in London?" She actually thought I was showing her a video of the Middle East.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, even people in the Middle East are kind of shaking their heads, going, you know, have you seen what's going on in London? You know, because my parents came to London from Glasgow. My dad was a Protestant, my mum was a Catholic, and in those days that was like, you know, something that you didn't do. It was a mixed marriage as far as they were concerned, right? So they came to London because London was this kind of, you know, haven of tolerance, right? And I grew up as a Catholic. It's like me saying, you know, I don't have any friends who aren't Catholics. Because
exactly.
I actually, you know, it was one of those weird things. I went to Catholic school, and it wasn't until I was about 16 when I went to FE college that I realised there were actually other people in the world apart from Catholic. I thought everybody was Catholic. And I suddenly went into a room and I was the only one there. And I went, oh, okay, well, this is quite interesting. But, you know, the idea that you would sort of focus your life around other people who are exactly sharing your same religion is bonkers, isn't it?
But that is what goes in certain parts of the country. That's what goes on. I remember, didn't they do a poll like a few years ago in Luton? And I think 70% of the people actually thought like England was Sharia law. So you do have these silos and these communities that are totally removed from real life. I've prosecuted victims of domestic abuse, women, who are literally shipped in to be kind of slaves to their husband. They're not allowed out of the house.
Right.
And you know what? I think they could be empowered, these women, because they don't recognize that in this country they have rights that they don't have back home where they're from, and they're not told of those rights. You know, they're not allowed to leave the country without their husband, and that is happening in our country, to be honest.
I know, which is really, really weird. When it comes to it, and I don't know when the next election actually is, because it's not in May, is it? We don't get a London mayoral election for another couple of years, I don't think. How sure are you that you can? Because I don't know anyone that's ever voted for Sadiq Khan, and yet he keeps winning. So I don't know how he's doing that. So how are you going to beat him?
So someone told me an interesting stat, and I'm not sure if it's true. More people in London voted to leave the EU than voted for him in 2016.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So the thing is, Mike, and I tell all your viewers, the mayoral only has 40%. 40% of people vote in the mayoral in London.
Yeah.
To put that into perspective, 75% vote in the general election.
Right.
So people are so apathetic, and the problem is in London is you do have Conservatives and Labour. You know, one wins, the other complains. Nothing fundamentally changes. So people are like, "What's the point? I'm just not going to vote. Nothing changes. Whoever I vote for, it's the same." And so I'm telling people it will be different, and I'm going to galvanize those people that don't bother voting because they become apathetic. And, you know, most of the Reform members actually have never voted or engaged in politics. So we're already engaging, I guess you'd call them the silent majority, who've never thought that politics could make a difference. So I think we're there, and I get stopped by such a massive coalition of people in London who you would never think are your typical Reform voters.
Yeah.
who just are desperate for change. You know, Poppy did talk about, of course, London's a great city. It's best in the world, or else I wouldn't stay and do what I'm doing to fight for it. But it needs leadership that really puts it on the pedestal. You listen to American podcasts or, you know, podcasts from abroad, and they do talk about a lost London.
Yeah.
And that's heartbreaking for me. Yeah. Heartbreaking. This is my city. This is my home. And you know what? I kind of feel like I feel like telling Sadiq Khan, you know, don't come and pursue your personal ideology and mess with my home. It's my home. It's my turf.
Right. And it's not his. You know, that's the thing. I mean, I liken him to like...
ours. It's ours.
It's like he's a football manager, you know. You don't get to own London just because you get appointed to manage it, you know, and you can't change it in your own image just because you want to. And that's the problem. But that's what the lefties are like. You know, I saw last night you had a bit of a spat with that idiot Matthew Stadland, you know, who calls me the most vile man he's ever met. He's never met me.
Wow.
Right? What's your final parting message to those lefties?
So I'll tell you, Mike, so for instance, he's trying to pedestrianise Oxford Street, right? Whether you agree with it or not, residents are overwhelmingly against it. Businesses are against it. And you know what he says? He says it is not up to residents to dictate what happens on Oxford Street. Yeah. So basically, it's up to him. You know, how dare the voter actually voice an opinion that doesn't match his, and it's totally irrelevant. There was an article 2 years ago where he made a joke that he has like Kim Jong-un type approval rates. Yeah. That's how he sees himself. He sees himself as some...
He's about the same height as him as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he sees himself as some emperor king of London, and I'm going to, you know, London is not his, it is ours. And I'm not winning it for me. Someone told me, oh, when you look out of London, do you see, you know, your whole, you know, that this is going to be yours? I said, absolutely not. I don't want it. It is for people. London has to go back to Londoners, has to work for Londoners. Yeah,
totally. Leyla Cunningham, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Have a lovely day. Leyla Cunningham, who's hopefully going to de-seat, is that a word? Unseat, I think is a word, isn't it? Sadiq Khan, who's a complete and utter plank, and who may or may not feature on Plank of the Week this week. There he is. He never walks next to anybody because you don't see how small he is. He literally got that suit from Mothercare. Anyway, listen, it's been another great show, so thank you to all of you who have watched. Howard Cox, Nick Buckley, Jamie Jenkins, William Yarwood, who was here first early doors, Austin Williams, Lord Ross Kempsell, who was here as well, Ellie Hodges, Leyla Cunningham. What an amazing show. The final tally on the old, what is Britain's main defence, HMS Dragon, 5%, Airfix drone kits, 19%. That's one from John Healy. Starmer's laser focus, 19%. But potholes on the beach coming in at number 1, 56%. If they're not on the beach, they're certainly on the way up the road from Dover, if you get on the M2 and try and get into any part of the southeast of England so that you can get a free hotel room. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. It feels like there was another announcement I was going to make, but I can't remember what it was, Pooch. What is it? It's the 19th of March. Is there something coming up tomorrow that we need to know about? It's Friday. Oh yeah, here we go. UK Live is going to be the new channel that you're going to have to watch because it's going to be the most fabulous thing you've ever seen, right? It's going to have all sorts of talent on it. It's going to have all sorts of different shows on it. It's going to be your voice in a mad world. Never mind the nonsense. Subscribe to UK Live for teenagers. You might recognise that. Looks a bit like a Sex Pistols album, which had Never Mind the Something Else, which we're not allowed to say anymore. Cojones, never mind the cojones, Sid Vicious and all that. But it's been an amazing show. A really, really good time was had by all. Thank you to all of you for watching and listening. And we'll be doing Plank of the Week after this and Plonk of the Week too. So I'm going to be here for ages and it's not going to end well, I can tell you. Thanks to Pooch, thanks to Charlotte. I can see Will Geddes lurking in the corner. Can I? No. Oh, I thought I could. Oh, it's Adam Sherry, sorry. I didn't, you don't look at all like an assassin. Anyway, I've obviously lost my mind. It's time for me to go. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 a.m.
Remember, despite all of the others out there, it's always the others. Don't be a plank.